Chapter 979. 20 hours ago, a doctor with a face full of fear was pushing a neat corpse cart through the streets, trying to seek shelter from the surrounding residents. However, at the critical juncture of the fog and monsters, the residents locked their doors, and no one was willing to accept the doctor. Just when the doctor felt tired from running for a long time and took a break, suddenly, a gust of wind blew. Not far from a roadside, the door of a restaurant with a signboard named Break's Stew opened, and a thick fog was constantly pouring out from the inside. The doctor's expression was quite ugly, and he didn't seem to want to go in. But it couldn't be helped. The streets were full of strange creatures, and this restaurant that suddenly opened its door was also the only refuge. The moment the doctor stepped into the restaurant, a strong meat aroma came from inside. On the ceiling of the stew shop, more than a dozen humanoid creatures hung with mechanical butcher hooks. Black body fluid flowed out from their wounds. They were all wearing the apprentice priest service issued by the pyramid. Most of them still had signs of life, but their movements were sealed and hung here. It seemed that they had to wait until the complete bleeding was done before they were taken to the kitchen. This group of apprentice priests stared at the doctor's accidental intrusion and immediately cast a pleading look, hoping that the doctor could save them. However, because the vocal system had been removed, they could only mumble and whine in a low voice. Such a scene scared the doctor, and he stepped back again and again. However, the door of the restaurant behind him had long been locked. Ta, 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 the continuous sound of chopping meat continued to come from the kitchen area, scaring the doctor and making him tremble. He didn't dare to save these priests at all. After all, they were hung from a high place, not to mention whether they could be taken out of the hook. Once touched, the hook would inevitably make sound. Once it attracted the guys in the kitchen, the doctor would also become one of the dried meat. Completely ignoring the apprentice priest's request, the doctor pushed the corpse to the back of the restaurant and tried to leave from the back door. However, after some observation, he found that the back door of the restaurant was located deep in the kitchen. The continuous sound of chopping meat also came from the kitchen. What to do? He could only gamble. The doctor gritted his teeth and quietly pushed the corpse into the kitchen. He used the stove and the vegetable rack to cover his body. Through the gap between the shelves, he could see a humanoid creature wearing a butcher's skirt and a triangular headgear. It was using a giant machete in its hand to chop meat on the chopping board. Every time the machete chopped down, liquid would splash out. It looked abnormally terrifying under the dim light. The doctor was so frightened that he lost his cool. He sped up and pushed the car towards the back door not far away. Seeing that the back door was right in front of him, he ran out of the restaurant. Suddenly, from the inner side of the back door, a little lowly in a blue dress flashed out and stared at the two people in front of her with completely blackened eyes. "I finally found you." As the little lowly's voice sounded in the kitchen, the sound of chopping meat stopped. Scary Triangle Head was already standing behind the doctor, the heavy knife in his hand raised high. Whoosh! The saber chopped down. The heavy knife happened to be in front of him, and it did not cut into the doctor's body. A few pieces of fragrant braised meat were placed on the surface of the blade. The surface of the meat was still emitting a fragrant aroma. It seemed to be fresh braised meat that had just been marinated. Aliza said with a smile, "I passed by this time. I happened to pass by this restaurant and discovered that the secret braised meat here is too delicious. It's a type of local pork, and there's a special fragrance in it that leaves an endless aftertaste in the mouth. Brother Nicholas, quickly try it." Pork. Han Dong picked up a piece and stuffed it into his mouth. It tasted really good. "Well, it's delicious. I thought you made the braised meat with special materials." Han Dong, who was disguised as a doctor, pointed at the trainee priest hanging in the restaurant's lobby. Aliza said with disgust, "The humans in this city have a kind of black blood flowing in their bodies. It stinks. It's disgusting." This group of fearless priests suddenly broke in when I was eating with Uncle Triangle and knocked over a large plate of braised meat. I was so angry. "Okay, Mr. Nicholas and Miss Jane, come with me. It's absolutely safe down there." The so-called back door did not lead to the outside world. Instead, it was a derivative passage formed by the descent of Silent Hill that led to a deeper silent space. Han Dong disguised himself as a doctor all the way and fled in panic. After entering the restaurant, he pretended to look for the back door to escape. In fact, he guessed that the pyramid had a way to see through the fog and observe the civilian area. For example, the Eye of Horus that frequently appeared during the assessment. As the main body of Silent Hill, Aliza was very likely to have been marked by the pyramid. Before Han Dong came into contact with her, he had to put on a show. Aliza, how many of the townspeople have successfully entered the civilian area? Everyone has come in. My fog can sense everyone's aura. We've all followed your instructions. Everyone is hiding in the dark, and we haven't made any big movements. Good. Next, I need Aliza to do something for you. There's an area called the Colosseum in the civilian area. I need your cooperation to put on a show. Okay. Aliza agreed without hesitation. She stayed in Dry Town all year round. Except for the occasional participants, she was usually very bored. Now that there were so many fun things to do, she was very willing to do them. Mr. Nicholas, your way of doing things is a little similar to Pennywise's. There's a hint of caution in the madness. Both of you are very interesting people. However, Uncle Triangle didn't let me go to Mr. Clown Circus before and try to minimize my contact with clowns as much as possible. He said that Mr. Clown was quite dangerous. However, Uncle Triangle doesn't have such a dislike for you. Oh, haha! Han Dong smiled and quickly nodded to Triangle Head, who was standing beside Aliza. That was exactly why. That was why Aliza wandered around the Colosseum, although he didn't expect that the pyramid would specifically target Aliza. But what surprised Han Dong was that 3 high priests had come to the Colosseum and tried to kill the origin of Silent Hill. Aliza, who was sitting on Triangle Head's shoulder, was immediately attacked by the internal staff as soon as she entered the Colosseum. But because the level difference was too big, they were basically instantly killed by Triangle Head, under the orders of the high priest. At the cost of sacrificing a large number of Colosseum staff, Aliza was successfully lured to the number 1 Colosseum. At the same time, there was a rush of knocking at the main door of the Colosseum. Still in a state of panic, the staff members who were cleaning up the bodies of their companions in the hall saw through the peephole on the door that a kind-looking doctor was pushing a body at the door. He seemed to be looking for a temporary shelter. This would create a perfect opportunity for Seth to assassinate the main target in the dark. As long as they could kill the female officer, most of the troubles in the civilian district would be solved, and their mission would be completed. When the fog dissipated, it would also take away the monsters wandering in the fog. The pyramid's priest army could smoothly enter the civilian area and regain sovereignty. As the high priest of execution, his assassination skills were top-notch. Moreover, Seth's ability was also abnormal. His eyes could always find the target's fatal weakness. In his opinion, Triangle Head was very difficult to deal with, but this little girl's body was full of weaknesses. When Triangle Head noticed the assassin coming from behind, and the assassin's aura was no weaker than the other 2 high priests, an ability from the world of Silent Hill was released. Swinging the machete in the opposite direction, it was very likely that it would not be able to block the assassin. Triangle Head's arm was repaired, and she put the heavy machete on her neck, self-decapitation. The body that was separated from the head disappeared instantly, as if it was taken back to Silent Hill. When the triangular-headed man, with a large piece of rotten flesh, fell to the ground, it immediately formed a closed triangular metal chamber that shrouded Alicia in it, providing comprehensive protection. Although Seth had never seen such a strange ability, in her eyes, there was nothing she could not cut. As mentioned earlier, as the high priest of execution, Seth's head was shaped like a machete. In fact, the black machete at the top was not her head, but her assassination weapon. At the same time, the machete was removed. High Priest Seth's body was also revealed, a skinny, dark-skinned woman with a slender braid, exuding an extremely terrifying murderous aura. At the same time, she was also the person in charge of this operation, responsible for killing the source of the fog. Clang! The machete smoothly cut open the metal chamber. Through the gap, Seth could already see Alicia hiding inside. She was releasing white fog, trying to create a new triangular-headed man again. Obviously, the speed of creating the triangular-headed man was not as fast as Seth's cutting speed. If this went on, Alicia might be beheaded. At this time, a noise came from the Colosseum. This place has been requisitioned by the high priest. You can't go in. Even if you're a doctor from Imhotep, you can't go in. The high priest is here. That's great. I have something to ask them. A loud voice echoed in the Colosseum. The intrusion of an outsider interrupted Seth's execution to a certain extent. However, Seth did not respond at all and continued to cut open the metal chamber. At the same time, a louder voice that could be heard by the entire Colosseum was heard. The high priests really have the demeanor of a ruler. They sacrificed 52 outstanding civilians who served the pyramid just to lure this young lady into the Colosseum. Aren't the lives of slaves counted? They can lure her in themselves, but they insist on sending innocent people to their deaths. One interesting idea. These words were obviously not for the high priest, but for the staff present in the Colosseum to hear. Judging from the situation when the high priest fought against the monster, they knew the strength of the monster in advance. They did use the lives of the slaves in exchange for the success of the lure. This matter was nothing in itself. As the high priest, he did have the right to make the slaves do anything, even sacrifice them. However, it was a problem when someone said it in front of him. And the speaker was not an ordinary person. His words had a kind of infectious quality, which came from the clown virus. It made his words more persuasive and rooted in the hearts of others, making the staff who heard it very concerned about this matter. Who is it? Seth also realized that something was wrong. While continuing to cut, he glanced behind him with the corner of his eyes. Unexpectedly, a strange image entered his peripheral vision. On the underworld, a dog-headed Grim Reaper holding a black scythe stood. In the Grim Reaper's hand was a rather terrifying corpse. The terrifying resentment it emitted could almost cover the entire Colosseum. Seth, who realized the danger, decisively gave up on the opportunity in front of him. He used Flash Step and stood side by side with his two companions, staring at the entrance of the Colosseum. However, with the naked eye, one could only see a doctor with a nervous expression pushing an exquisite-looking female corpse. Slaves are also people, and slaves are an indispensable part of the holy capital. Am I right? High priests? Who are you? How dare you talk about humanity and justice in front of me? The high priest of glory. I, Menes, am both the spokesperson of the Sun Temple and the light of the holy capital. The slaves use their lives in exchange for peace in the holy capital. It is their glory. Deceiver. Under the glory, give up your original form. Menes was completely enraged when he heard Han Dong's reactionary words. A ray of light that could burn all evil and darkness shot out from Menes' chest, completely enveloping Han Dong and the female corpse. Unexpectedly, Han Dong still looked the same as before. There was no change. The female corpse on the cart seemed to be unhappy. A stream of blood flowed out from her nostrils. Asterisk ping. Asterisk the glass shattered. The sunwheel mirror that constantly covered Menes' body to block external attacks shattered. Menes seemed to have suffered an undetectable impact. His body twisted in a spiral and slammed into the wall at the side of the arena. Streams of black water with spots of light slowly flowed out from the cracks in the wall. Han Dong said with a look of disdain. Being able to control light means being the emissary of the sun, the spokesperson of the Sun Temple? Then you have to excrete every day. Why aren't you the emissary of the toilet, the spokesperson of old age? Chapter 981. Han Dong's mouth was unforgiving. However, the high priestess was also quite powerful. The light released by Menes did not seem to have much effect on Han Dong. In fact, Han Dong was completely relying on the adaptability of the black vortex body to resist it head-on. However, he could still feel waves of burning in his soul. At the same time, he retracted his left arm behind his back. This kind of light had a certain restraining effect on death. Even if it was only for a moment, it still burned off a layer of skin on Han Dong's left arm. However, Miss Jane suddenly made her move. With his magic eye, Han Dong could vaguely see that when Miss Jane used some kind of primitive witchcraft, a hidden pattern directly appeared on the surface of the sunwheel mirror that Meanies used to protect his body. When the sunwheel mirror was shattered, it also caused a spiral impact on Meanie's body. It was quite terrifying. Compared to the past, Miss Jane had grown a lot. In terms of destructive power, Miss Jane could be ranked in the top 3 among the 10 demons of Dry Town. However, the powerful witchcraft used by Miss Jane would also cause a certain amount of backlash on her body. While Meanies suffered a heavy blow, the other 2 high priestesses were stunned. Han Dong threw out a void tentacle with his right hand and used spatial teleportation to bring the 6th demon, Aletheia, back to his side. Aletheia also reconstructed a triangular head on her head. Compared to the previous triangular head, this one was smaller and more agile. The powerful heavy sword was also changed into 2 smaller butcher knives to adapt to the current battle. This way, the situation in the Colosseum became a 3v3 situation. Aletheia said cautiously, "Mr. Nicholas, you were right. There are also very powerful people in this city. However, the origin of their power seems to be the same. The same stinky black blood flows in their bodies. Yes, I'll tell you the origin of their power after the war. However, although the origin of their power is the same, due to the subsequent development, their powers are divided into different factions. These 3 are the high priestesses second only to the pharaoh. You have to be careful. Since Miss Jane has already attacked High Priest Brilliant Light, let us continue to deal with him. Can I kill it?" Miss Jane's unhappy voice sounded. Of course. Alessa was also very excited to meet such an interesting opponent. Hee, then I'll deal with that dark-skinned big sister. She almost killed me just now. I want to see what her nature is. Yes. When the assignment of personnel was completed, Han Dong showed a friendly smile and greeted Meat Boss, Gute, who was opposite him. This high priest was the one responsible for testing Han Dong and the other's muscle strength during the routine test. At that time, Han Dong let Count take over the body and used an extraordinary crazy feast attack, which also left a deep impression on CEO Meat. When Meat, general manager, looked at Han Dong, it seemed to have recognized his true identity. However, there was not much emotion in Meat, general manager's eyes. It was as if he was simply following the pharaoh's orders. At this moment, an angry voice came from the sidelines. "Unforgivable! How dare you tarnish the glory of the sun? How dare you destroy my beautiful body?" After being attacked by a spell, Meanie's body was completely broken from the middle. Asterisk drip, 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 asterisk black water with spots of light flowed out of his body. At this moment, the energy from the glory of light was completely activated. Meanies was not exaggerating. He was the representative of the Sun Temple and was respectfully called the Light of the Holy Capital by the people. In terms of ability derivation, light, he was second only to the sun god. The black water flowing in his body was completely photonized, and even his cells were dyed with the light attribute. Photonization upgrade and optimize the rapid regeneration of the black water. It can split and reconstruct cells at the photon level to achieve the effect of instant regeneration. The body that was originally broken at the waist turned into photons and reassembled in a standing position. After the reassembly was complete, the glory of light bloomed. Meanies assumed a fighting stance. However, the situation in front of him was very strange. The enemies and companions that were supposed to be in the Colosseum, and even the staff on the sidelines, had all disappeared. Moreover, the Colosseum had become unusually clean. There was not a speck of dust on the ground. What's going on? Meanie spread out the glory of light and did not find anyone alive. He quickly went to the side of the Colosseum and pushed open the iron door. Inside the door was a dark and gloomy corridor. The glory of light could only reach up to 5 meters in this gloomy corridor. Not far away, he saw a bald female corpse with obvious stitches on her body. She was waiting for Meanies at the entrance of the morgue. Inside the Colosseum, Miss Jane and Meanies, who was affected by witchcraft, had their bodies covered by a special shroud. Their thoughts had been diverted elsewhere. At the same time, Han Dong and Elisa found their targets and started fighting. After transforming, Triangular Head could keep up with the execution of the High Priest. Elisa would also summon various monsters from Silent Hill from time to assist in the attack. They were evenly matched. As for Han Dong, he was a little strange. Standing in front of Mr. Meat, he did not make a move immediately. Instead, he was negotiating something. "Mr. Meat, I heard that you have a good relationship with Tara in private." Before he could finish his words, Mr. Meat swung his fist. The momentum was so shocking that Han Dong immediately used his left and right hands to defend. A layer of black sand wall with a pattern of scarabs appeared in front of them. At the same time, his right arm grew rapidly. All kinds of fleshy threads were connected together to form a biological meat shield in front of him. However, Mr. Meat's fist first hit the surface of the sand wall. Then, something terrifying happened. His oval-shaped arm was full of fat. As his fist moved, layers of fat pulsed on the surface of his arm like rubber rings. Through this form, he kept accumulating strength in his fist. This scene was similar to the main character of a pirate anime, but Mr. Meat's arm was much fatter. It was completely dependent on the accumulated strength of his fat. Boom! The layer of fat kept surging forward and broke through the sand wall. It crashed in the meat shield formed by Han Dong's right arm. Boom! The temporary meat shield formed by his right arm exploded, and he flew straight to the edge of the field. "Count!" Following Han Dong's shout, a giant blood dog grew out of his broken right arm. It even extended 4 thick limbs and firmly stepped on the ground to prevent his body from retreating. Even so, he still slid 10 meters before coming to a complete stop. What a terrifying fat power. Mr. Meat's thinking is simple. He's just following the Pharaoh's orders. I have to control him and persuade him as much as possible. The High Priest is the core power of God's capital. I have to find ways to reduce the losses. Chapter 982. The Pharaoh inside the pyramid had already observed the situation in the Colosseum through the eye of Horus. He was about to kill one of the enemy's generals and end the fog that shrouded the civilian area, but he was stopped by an intruder. All of this was obviously premeditated. However, since Han Dong, the leader, had appeared, the Pharaoh also had some countermeasures. The world forces that Nicholas attracted have already infiltrated the civilian area under the cover of the fog and the interruption of the network. In the fog, this group of townspeople is not affected at all, and they even have the assistance of various fog monsters. Our forces will be limited by perception in all aspects, which is very disadvantageous for battle. Before the source of the fog is cleared, it is not good to send out troops. However, since Nicholas has appeared, we could try to end this war in advance. Shu you go. Try to see if you can directly kill the enemy leader. Even if you're discovered or get into trouble, with your ability, you should be able to escape unscathed. The Pharaohs will be transmitted to any area of Luoyang. These words were directly transmitted to the Temple of Wind. It was heard by a handsome man with floating blue hair and a perfect body. There were a large number of light blue clouds on the surface of his body. A material from the Pharaoh's treasury, an exclusive divine weapon, Blue Bird, made by Osiris Heavy Industries, was in the hands of this man. As a gust of wind blew through the temple, there was no one on the throne of the god of wind. The unique wind was quickly approaching the southern entrance of the civilian area, which was also the entrance closest to the Colosseum. Observed with the naked eye, there was only a slight difference in color. This gust of wind had a hint of light blue. Just as this gust of wind was about to enter the civilian area, unexpectedly, the light blue gust of wind crashed heavily into a colorful wall that was both real and illusory, and was isolated from the civilian area. A colorful ripple spread out from the point of impact, as if a layer of enchantment that the eye of Horus could not pry into had been set up. The strange thing was, this layer of illusory color enchantment seemed to be screening, and it would not work on ordinary people. Even the priests could enter and exit normally. It would only block special existences with divinity. As Han Dong had been to the Forbidden Zone, he established a friendly relationship with the White Giant. He knew very well that God's capital had deliberately preserved the existence of the White Giant Temple through the method of captivity. They had actively sent slaves into the temple to steal the White Giant's technology. Since the White Giant could create the god of alien, Han Dong estimated that there must be a divine creation in the pyramid. In order to prevent the first phase of the war, the uprising in the civilian district from being disturbed by unknown forces, the existence closest to God in Ridley was assigned to guard the outer area and conduct a screening defense. One of the 9 pillar gods, wind god Shu, revealed his true form because he was blocked. The power of the hurricane condensed around his body, intending to cut open the colorful barrier in front of him. At this moment, an old man with a head full of white hair and a face full of wrinkles wearing a white coat suddenly appeared at the lower end of the road. I thought that Nicholas was joking. I didn't expect that there really is a god in this living city. Interesting, I need to understand your body. The man with light blue hair, fluttering in the air, looked at the old man below with an unpleasant expression, because the old man's body exuded a strange and powerful divinity. This divinity was completely different from the god's level that Shu knew. However, as one of the 9 pillar gods, he was originally blessed by God's capital. The wind here would listen to his call, and he was completely unafraid of the enemy in front of him. Bluebird, a long spear inlaid with a bluebird sculpture at the bottom. As he raised his hand, the hurricane gathered on the long spear under the blessing of the divinity and suddenly stabbed at the old man below. The bluebird flashed, and the white coat and the old man's body were torn apart together. However, the tip of the spear, which was the center of the hurricane, was blocked by a strange field. It was President Richard's fingertips that blocked the tip of the spear. The disguised body of the old man was equivalent to President Richard's coat. As the coat was torn apart by the hurricane, President Richard's true void body was directly exposed. The body that used to be in the dark swamp of deep space was now dyed with the color of stars. Strands of illusory colors moved between the tentacles, and the lower body was wearing a priest's dress that symbolized the void god cult. Superbody, President Richard stretched out his finger and formed a kind of void field, blocking the god of wind stab head-on. However, there was still a little that was not blocked. Drip, a drop of blood shining with starlight, dripped to the ground. Wow, it's so powerful. It can actually hurt me. President Richard looked excited. The light blue-haired man, Shu, stared at the blocked attack with a shocked expression. When he looked up at the old man again, he had the illusion that he was looking at the deep space of the universe. In the depths of the distant galaxy, there was a mass of matter that looked like an assembly of eyes floating. When he came back to his senses, the void imprint had already appeared on Shu's chest. Even a god could not resist this kind of void imprint. Shu, come back. The enemy in front of you is very dangerous. The pharaoh's voice interrupted the god of wind's thoughts of attacking. He immediately turned into a light blue wind and turned back to the pyramid at the fastest speed. The pharaoh would personally remove the strange void imprint for him. Under the gaze of the eye of Horus, President Richard was still covered by a layer of color. If one looked carefully, one could only see the void tentacles between the colors. It even made the pharaoh's eyes uncomfortable. There's such a person in the town? He actually has such a high level of divinity, and he obtained the power of divinity through himself. President Richard's appearance made the pharaoh dispel his decision to continue sending divine creations. Before the fog dissipated, he would not casually send in troops. I hope the 3 high priests can give me a better answer. Even if we can't deal with Nicholas, we have to eliminate the source of the fog. At this time, President Richard, who was standing at the end of the street, removed the color and took the initiative to look at the eye of Horus. He waved at the pharaoh on the other side. Then a void gate opened behind the president, and a large number of tentacles stretched out from inside. President Richard waved goodbye as he was dragged into the gate. Today, President Richard was worthy of the title of number one below the mayor. This ranking even included the clown Han Dong. In the Colosseum, the sound of flesh bombarding flesh could be heard one after another. Even his sixth demon, Elisa, couldn't stand it anymore. She was worried about Han Dong's physical condition. Will Mr. Nicholas die? Should I go and help him? Why should I do this? With Mr. Nicholas' strength, he should have the upper hand. Elisa was still summoning various monsters to cooperate with the Triangle Head to fight the tireless Seth, Executioner, head-on. Boom! Han Dong suffered a head-on collision from a meat. Black sand scattered in all directions, and several of his ribs were broken. His whole body slammed straight into the wall at the side of the field. Count also felt uncomfortable. Several bloodhounds had already died. He hurriedly shouted, "Hey, what are you playing at? If this goes on, you won't be able to hold on." Count was also very nervous and even a little angry. This was because Han Dong was completely one-sided and had no intention of fighting back. Including the collision just now, this was already the 16th time he had been attacked head-on by the meat. "Count, you just need to repair my body so that I can hold on. This is what I have to do if I want to ascend to the position of Pharaoh." Han Dong propped up his battered body and walked towards the meat boss again. When he was 5 meters away, Han Dong said calmly, "Boss Meat, can we talk now?" As soon as he finished speaking, he swung his fist downward and directly blasted Han Dong to the ground, forming a pit more than a meter deep. Unfortunately, Han Dong's skull was abnormally strong and firmly blocked this punch. Even though he was pressed down by the fist piled up with fat and blood kept spitting out of his mouth, Han Dong still asked, "Boss Meat, can we talk now?" Unexpectedly, the meat followed up with another heavy stomp. And just as this stomp was about to land, at the edge of the Colosseum, the brilliant high priest, whose body was covered by a white cloth, suddenly let out a painful howl. His body began to shrink inwards. Brilliant cracks spread all over his body, and his face twisted in pain. "No, impossible. How can I die here? I'm God's capital." Before he could finish his words, accompanied by a strong explosion of brilliant, his body completely exploded. The brilliant high priest died. Corresponding, Miss Jane, who was also covered by a white cloth, had one of her slender arms separated from her body. It fell to the ground and turned into fine powder that scattered with the wind. There were also many severe burn marks on the surface of her body. Boss Meat stared at the dead meanies and grabbed Han Dong from the ground. The shape of a mouth slowly appeared on his fat face. He spoke for the first time. "Meanies is dead. You can say whatever you want to say now." Chapter 983. Long before Han Dong participated in the God's Choice test, he had learned about the situation of the other high priests from Terra. In the pyramid, there were many high priests who refused to accept the pharaoh or were neutral. After all, the God's capital's constitution was like this. The corresponding positions were for the people with the corresponding abilities. At first, more than 90% of the high priests wanted to replace the pharaoh. However, all the high priests who tried to challenge him failed without exception. This went on for a long time. When everyone realized how powerful the current pharaoh was, the number of people who had such thoughts dropped from 90% to 20%. Among these 20% members, this Boss Meat was included. Boss Meat was fat all over his body. The proportion of his brain was also much higher than that of an ordinary person. The reason why he did not talk to Han Dong and only beat him up was because Boss Meat saw the situation and was not biased towards Han Dong. Or rather, the current Han Dong was not worth it and not enough to change his position. Until he noticed 3 points. 1. The battle in the Colosseum had been going on for half an hour. Logically speaking, the Eye of Horus should be able to see the situation here, but the pyramid's reinforcements had not arrived. This meant that Han Dong must have secretly set up a method to prevent the battle from being affected by external factors. 2. Han Dong's attitude was quite sincere, at least much better than the current pharaoh. 3. And most important point, the current pharaoh's experienced bootlicker, dazzling meanies, who was also powerful, was dead. As a high priest, Boss Meat knew Meanie's special ability very well. Due to the photonization effect, Meanie's could be said to be one of the best life-saving abilities among all the high priests. However, Han Dong's subordinates could kill Meanie's on the spot. With the above 3 points added together, Boss Meat changed his position. Meanie's is dead. You can say whatever you want. Han Dong slowly climbed up from the pit, reached out to one of his nostrils, and exhaled. A stream of blood, along with the crushed cartilage, flew out from his nostrils. This feeling made Han Dong feel much better. Then, he slowly said, I just want to ask the two of you to join my camp. My uprising will start from the civilian area. I also hope that the two of you can use this Colosseum as the center to raise the flag of overthrowing slavery and win over the people for me. Both of you other than Boss Meat. There was also Executioner Seth, who was fighting against him. Hearing this, Seth immediately took a quick step to the side to put some distance between himself and Triangle Head. He stared at Boss Meat with a serious expression. Gute, are you going to betray us? However, General Meat answered his companion's question calmly. It's not a rebellion, but a revolution. However, I'm not completely sure yet. As he spoke, General Meat once again changed the topic to Han Dong. We will once again fully assist you in your promotion. When the time comes, what can you give us? Hearing this, Han Dong gestured for him to wait. At this time, a colorful substance descended from the top of the Colosseum and quickly entered Han Dong's brain. A series of colors flashed in Han Dong's eyes, and in this way, image-level information was transmitted. Just now, a friend of mine stopped a special existence outside the city. He is different from your high priest, but his strength is not weaker than yours. May I ask, General Meat, does the Pharaoh have an army with divinity? General Meat was shocked. Did the 9 pillar gods attack just now? 9 pillar gods? Han Dong frowned and continued. No, there is only a man with flowing blue hair who could control the winds of Shundu. He tried to sneak into the civilian area from the south. He probably wanted to interfere with our battle here. Coincidentally, he was blocked by my friend. As expected, Shundu has already created a god. It's not a true god. It's just, as he said this, the other high priest at the side looked at him. This was a secret of the highest level. If it was revealed, even a high priest would be stripped of his identity. If it was revealed, it meant that General Meat had chosen to betray. Just what? It's just a relationship between a divinity and a vessel. Han Dong reacted quickly and immediately said, divinity and vessel. Using the Egyptian gods that Shundu believes in as a template to create a divinity of the corresponding attributes, and then take it to a priest of the matching attributes to try to fuse it? General Meat nodded. That's about it. The actual operation is quite complicated, and it requires a lot of materials. The God's Chosen One assessment is carried out with different gods. On one hand, it is to assess the potential of the slaves, and on the other hand, it is to select special talents. If the slave who accepted the test showed an extremely high compatibility with a certain god, then the slave who accepted the test showed an extremely high compatibility with the god. After passing the assessment, he will become a candidate and have the opportunity to become a vessel to fuse with the divinity. If he can really become a new god, the Pharaoh will also give special permission to build a temple and a corresponding company for this new god in the first ring area. After all, at the beginning of the birth of a new god, a large amount of power of faith and energy materials are needed to ensure stability. Han Dong could not help but laugh when he heard this. Ha ha ha, a god that kneels under the Pharaoh. How ironic. By the way, the divinity obtained through the creation of the divinity and the accommodation of the body should not be as powerful as becoming a god by oneself, right? Yes, some aspects will be restricted and limited. In my eyes, this cannot be called a true god. It is just a false god. Even so, we are quite eager. When we obtain divinity, we will also undergo a real transformation. Yes, as long as the attributes match, once divinity is obtained, the individual related abilities will undergo a qualitative change. Let's do it this way. If you can help me take over Shundu, these divinities will be given to you. The two of you have pledged allegiance to me from the beginning, so you naturally have priority. General Meat looked surprised and immediately responded. Now, the main divinities are embedded in the bodies of the 9 pillar gods. If you want to obtain the divinity, in addition to defeating them, you also need to strip them without destroying the divinity. The strength of the 9 pillar gods is quite terrifying. I suggest that you focus on killing them. When General Meat said this, Han Dong showed an evil smile. Such an expression even made the fat all over General Meat's body tremble. No. The ultimate purpose of starting the Node War is to obtain an undamaged Shundu. This is also why, no matter how you hit me, I will not fight back. Because in my eyes, General Meat, you are an important part of Shundu. The 9 pillar gods are like the 9 pillars supporting Shundu. They must not be harmed. The unharmed here refers to the divinity. As for their bodies, it doesn't matter what you do to them. Don't worry, didn't you say? This method of becoming a god is a false god? On my side, there is a true God in a sense. True God. Speaking of this, President Richard, who was temporarily acting as a security guard at the southern entrance, suddenly sneezed. There was a kind of illusory substance in the sneeze, and it happened to spray on a passing trainee priest, causing him to instantly degenerate, exploding and scattering into lumps of star-colored flesh. Chapter 984. Since Meat had already revealed the secret of the God Creator, it was time for him to take a side. Meat's decision also led the execution high priest beside him. The two had a good relationship in private, and it could even be said that they were close. However, compared to Terra and Meat, this execution high priest did not have much of a reaction and was completely neutral. Now, Meanies was dead, and Meat chose to be betrayed, leaving only one option for Seth. Please rest here for a while to recover the stamina you used during the battle. Later, I will explain the uprising plan in the civilian area to you. As for the Pharaoh, he lost 3 high priests and the 9 pillar god, Wind God's ambush failed. With the internet completely cut off and Silent Hill descending, the Pharaoh will most likely give up on the civilian area. We don't need to be in a hurry. Rest for an hour or two. Okay. Since they had already chosen a side, there was nothing more to say. Han Dong was able to take over the civilian area and perfectly deal with the ambush of the 3 high priests. This was enough to show that he had the qualifications to be a leader. Meat and Seth did not think too much about it and went to the high-class room of the War Beast organization to rest. Han Dong immediately went to Jane's side to check on her injuries. It had to be said that Dazzling Meanies was a high priest with a strong foundation. The ability he had could suppress evil to a certain extent. If he faced Han Dong, Jane, or Elisa head-on, he would have the upper hand. It was all because he had underestimated his opponent at the beginning that he took Miss Jane's attack head-on and was branded with the mark of the Secret Kingdom. Later, he was able to successfully drag Meanies into a subconsciousness space. Otherwise, it would be quite troublesome to face him head-on. At least, there would be no way to determine the winner in a short time. Looking at Miss Jane's broken arm and the severe burn marks all over her body, Han Dong's heart ached. When he connected his consciousness, Miss Jane's voice sounded. It's okay. The destruction of my right arm is mainly because I used a lot of destructive witchcraft. Otherwise, it would be difficult to kill this high priest in a short time. As for the burns on my body, I just need some time to recover. Since Elisa is here, let her guard me. Nicholas, hurry up and go about your business. When the war is over, you can accompany me if you have time. Okay, I'll pick you up later. Indeed, Han Dong still had things to do. Although this battle was quite successful, and he had even managed to pull the 2 high priests to his side, at the same time, he had also uncovered a major problem. The Pharaoh's strongest army, other than the high priests, also had an army of fake gods. The war was just a good start. If they wanted to obtain the final victory, they had to take every step steadily. In the beginning, I used the high priest's abuse of the slaves' lives to lure the monsters into the trap to awaken their rebellious hearts. Due to the use of a small amount of the cackling virus, it has affected all the staff in the Colosseum. Once the meat recovers, I'll organize a meeting. It's better not to use the virus as much as possible. I have to use the most ordinary way to completely evoke the rebellious hearts of the slaves. Han Dong could play a little trick in words, especially some of the judgmental words that could deeply affect others and even plant seeds deep in their hearts. The key to this was the cackling maniac, because of the fusion of Pennywise's clown virus. So the cackling maniac also had a similar infection characteristic. In the aspect of spiritual invasion, it was even better when paired with the faceless skull. In principle, Han Dong could use the cover of the fog and a large loudspeaker to let his laughter be heard by everyone in the civilian area. Then he could spread the cackling maniac to all the civilians and easily win the support of all the civilians. However, Han Dong directly erased this idea. He wasn't Pennywise. What he wanted was a fairy's capital that hadn't changed at all. Han Dong wanted the people of Shun to recognize him as the pharaoh from the bottom of their hearts. He did not want to use the cackling maniac's influence to create a cackling maniac dynasty that enslaved people's minds. The more he used external influence, the more false the final result. Sooner or later, the lie would be exposed, and Han Dong would be overthrown by a more dominant and influential participant. Because he took more than 10 heavy punches from Boss Meat, Han Dong himself also needed to rest for a while. While the Black Vortex body was being beaten, it had already warned Han Dong many times. Ouch! Boss Meat didn't know how to act either. Every punch was real. If it wasn't for Miss Jane quickly taking care of meanies, my body might have broken through the limit and directly exploded. Fortunately, the ending was perfect. Ouch, it hurts. As soon as Han Dong walked out of the Colosseum and left everyone's sight, he immediately changed to a difficult posture of walking while leaning against the wall. After all, Han Dong was not the type to take a beating. This kind of thing should be left to Togu. Walking in the long passage of the Colosseum, there were only 10 meters left before he returned to the main hall. Asterisk drip, 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 drip. Asterisk the crisp sound of water dripping could be heard from the lounge on the side, and the metal door of the corresponding lounge opened a small gap. Han Dong immediately spread out his senses, and after confirming that there was no one in the passage, he quickly stepped into the lounge. Asterisk click, asterisk the door was locked. Looking at the lounge, the first thing that caught his eye was a pair of long legs resting on a bench. Crystal clear water droplets continuously flowed out from the slightly fleshy white thighs and dripped onto the ground. Meritus used the time while waiting for Han Dong to do some stretching exercises in a tight-fitting white shirt. Oh, that female corpse is really powerful. She could actually kill a high priestess in just a few minutes. Han Dong smiled foolishly and quickly changed the topic. Miss Mary, did you find the target? Of course I did. These dark dwellers are quite interesting. From their tone, they were planning to take advantage of the chaos in the god's capital to make some money. Who knew that I would find them? However, these guys are quite arrogant. They are not willing to take the risk to participate in the war. Even if they want to help, they want to split the loot 50-50. I'll let you go and talk to them. Okay, Miss Mary, quickly bring me there. This was the second task that Han Dong gave Meritus. After sending the clerk and Elisa to the civilian district, they immediately searched for traces of the 5th squad. If they had already left, then forget it. If they were still in the god's capital. If he could rope in this group of hybrid demons who worshipped the same king as Lord Perugia, he would be able to add another powerful force to his forces. Moreover, from the performance of this Fate event, these Dark Dwellers had superior concealment abilities. They could help Han Dong do some secret things. As Han Dong was devoured by Meritus, he was transferred and breathed in and out. Han Dong was covered in saliva when he landed in a secret room. When Han Dong appeared, the so-called Dark Dwellers in front of him were all shocked. Their unwillingness to cooperate disappeared, and they immediately knelt on the ground. Your Majesty, Chapter 985. As early as when Han Dong was looking at the memory of the promotion competition, Meritus identified the identity of the fifth squad. They belonged to the hybrid demons formed by the associated darkness, dark dwellers, and they believed in the old king, Chaos Walker. According to Meritus, the Chaos Walker they believed in was the gray existence that stopped time when Han Dong attacked Perugia City and met with Han Dong alone. In addition, Han Dong was also suspicious. Since these dark dwellers were born in the darkness, they may also be related to the ultimate goal of the Holy City expedition. As mentioned before, the Old King's tablet deciphered by the Secret Whisper Knights recorded a dark existence. Contacting such a hybrid demon squad was of great significance, second only to the Node War. Therefore, Han Dong asked Meritus to find the traces of the fifth squad. Once found, Han Dong wanted to have a good talk with these guys. Since they were hybrid demons that could go to the Destiny space, they must have a certain human attribute, so it would be easier to negotiate with them than those purebred hybrid demons. In the civilian area, in a gloomy room that was invaded by darkness, the dark dwellers who temporarily lived here, all mature hybrid demons, were waiting to negotiate with Han Dong. They wanted to get as much benefits as possible to get close to the gate of truth. They were all covered in black cloaks, and the surface of their skin exuded a black light. Their shadows and bodies would have asymmetrical tentacles. The four members were gathered in the hall. Some were lying on the wall like a lizard, revealing a black light tail. Some were half of their bodies merged into the darkness, and only the upper body was exposed to the ceiling. There were also two who were playing an advanced version of the flower rope game, using thin threads woven by the darkness. Han Dong had already drafted the script for negotiation. He came here by teleportation and was about to negotiate with this group of mature hybrid demons comparable to Count. When this group of dark dwellers observed Han Dong's appearance, they were suddenly stunned. This image seemed to be a perfect match with a certain supreme existence in their memory. A sense of reverence from the depths of their hearts filled their bodies. They knelt in front of Han Dong in the most respectful posture of the dark race. The head was completely buried in the darkness, and the spine on the back was raised high in an arc. Their voices echoed in the building through the darkness. Your Majesty, Han Dong, who was preparing to negotiate with the hybrid demons according to the script, was stunned. Although it might be related to the gray Old King, it shouldn't have turned into such an exaggerated situation. Meritus, who was standing beside him, was also shocked when she saw this scene. Then, she fell into deep thought. When she first saw Han Dong, she felt very strange. She did not understand why Han Dong was emitting gray matter similar to the Chaos Walker, but was also recognized by the other two former kings. In the subsequent contact, Meritus also became interested in the opposite sex for the first time. In the entire Toad City, she couldn't find a male as interesting as Han Dong. Furthermore, Meritus was certain that Han Dong was a unique existence. He could not be classified as a hybrid demon, nor could he be classified as a human. Just as Han Dong was a little stunned and didn't know how to deal with the current situation. One of the Dark Race residents slowly raised his head and stared at Han Dong for a long time with a face full of doubts. No, our Majesty stands at the highest point of the universe, but he can't interfere with the Destiny space. You are not the king, but the structure of your brain is almost the same, and at the same time, you emit the gray matter that only the king and his direct descendants can release. Are you the incarnation of a king, or the Chaos Kin? Hearing the question of the Dark Race residents, Han Dong recalled the conversation with the Gray Matter King in Perugia City. I don't know which master copied the head. It looks flawed, but it's actually so perfect. From the above conversation, Han Dong could be sure of one thing. The Dark Race residents should have never seen the true appearance of the Gray Matter King. Firstly, it was because the old king with a high position rarely appeared. Secondly, this group of people treated Han Dong as the king. If they had seen the real king, they would definitely be able to tell the difference. They should have used other methods to understand the king's appearance and feel the king's aura. For example, the stone slab, the virtual image of the dream, or the description of the king from a certain atavistic body or a mythical body. My image and aura were exactly the same as the king they knew indirectly, which was why they were mistaken. Most likely, that was the case. After all, even Lord Perugia, who had an atavistic body, was unable to see the old king before his death. In that case, is my head really a copy of the gray matter king? No wonder my tentacles are also gray, but there are some blemishes on the surface of the tentacles. But according to the old king's evaluation, these blemishes are another kind of perfection. I don't know what kind of master could replicate such a perfect head using the old king as a template, and even be praised by the person involved. There's still a long way to go. Thinking of this, Han Dong secretly smiled. In this way, the originally difficult negotiation became simple. With the information in his hands, Han Dong began to show his traditional skills and began to bluff to his heart's content. How did I come? Where did I come from? Actually, even I don't know. The only memory I have is of an abyss prison full of chaos. Since I was born, I have traveled the European continent. Recently, I just passed by Perugia, and I really didn't like the rats there. Later, I met Lord Meritus in the wetlands. Coincidentally, I accepted the invitation of the Buffo, and Lord Meritus and I participated in this fateful event together. After it was done, the Buffo promised to give me the opportunity to observe the wall. The Buffo's invitation, the opportunity to observe the wall. For these mature mantis demons, this was an opportunity that they could only dream of. If they could peek into the toad wall, even if it was a wall left by a mythical body, it would allow them to get closer and even reach out to touch the door of truth. Han Dong found the opportunity and began to ask about the origin of this group of dark inhabitants. Which teleportation gate did you come in from? Did you come here voluntarily? Or were you entrusted by the Lord to come here? Sir, we are the dark inhabitants living in the city of London. We were entrusted by Mother, Ng, to come here through the door of darkness in the city of London. We tried to obtain precious materials that don't exist in the real world from the Destiny space, especially materials related to darkness. It can help us reach the atavism stage faster, and it can also improve our status in the city of London. When he heard this, Han Dong was shocked. The city of London, wasn't this the final destination of the Holy City expedition? The mother mentioned by these guys was likely to be the ultimate goal of the expeditionary force, the lower old king, related to darkness. However, what made Han Dong quite puzzled was, why did this group of dark inhabitants believe in the two old kings? Or because the lower old king and the upper old king were not at the same level? The darkness in the city of London, including the lower old king, who ruled the city-state, were all under the control of the gray old king. Han Dong was shocked in his heart, but he was extraordinarily calm on the surface. He planned to ask Meritus privately. Continue to talk about your experience in God's capital. Han Dong smiled and gestured for this group of dark inhabitants to continue. The Destiny space repels us, and we also know that it is extremely dangerous here. Therefore, we deliberately hide in the darkness to avoid conflict. At first, we just wanted to leave quickly after clearing the level. Who knew that a war would suddenly break out? So we wanted to take the opportunity to get something before leaving. Since the war was caused by you, sir, we are willing to provide assistance. We only hope that you can keep us safe. Han Dong smiled with satisfaction. Well, don't worry, I will ensure your safety. As long as you do well, I will even give you some darkness-related treasures in God's capital. Or you could bring a meeting gift for the manager of the city of London, your mother. Also, I am also very interested in the city of London. After I complete the Buffo's commission, I'll try to visit the city of London next. Looking forward to your visit. My mother will be very happy. Chapter 986. Although Han Dong used the 4 dark residents as tools in his heart, he didn't want them to die. Because the dark residents were stealthy and the team's execution was strong, Han Dong ordered them to sneak into the pyramid to do something less dangerous when the war advanced to the Nine Pillars Company. After all, The information about the city of London was too important. Han Dong would wait until the war was over and then ask them about the city of London in the name of giving rewards. This building shrouded in darkness is very good. I will tell my subordinates not to interfere with your rest. You just wait here for my operation notice. Yes, sir. Since they had identified Han Dong's identity, the dark residents no longer disguised themselves. They took off their hoods and revealed their faces. The fiends who stepped into the destiny realm must also be mixed with human attributes. These 4 dark residents all had faces similar to humans. Strangely, they were all women. Their skin emitted a black light, and only their eyes were white. Their appearance was similar to the dark elves in some magical works. Their ears were quite strange. Their earlobes were tentacle-shaped, and they held a small ball of flesh that emitted a dark light, which seemed to belong to their energy storage. Goodbye, sir. 4 girls who looked like dark elves surrounded each other and waved goodbye to Han Dong. Their bodies were shining with dark light. Although they looked like this if they really fought, each of them had the strength close to count. Moreover, they could use body fusion, which was very difficult to deal with. I thought the dark residents were a group of deformed life forms that were seriously aging due to being in the dark for a long time. Their skin was loose, and their whole body was flowing with black liquid. I didn't expect them to be such cute little black sisters. However, this is also related to their human genes, because this matter was settled in advance. Han Dong was not in a hurry to return to the Colosseum. He intended to let the High Priest and Miss Jane rest for a while. He chose to walk back with Meritus and talk about the fiends, without waiting for Han Dong to ask. Her soft and moist body took the initiative to stick to him. After the Dark Dwellers mistook Han Dong as king, Meritus' interest in Han Dong reached a deeper level. From the very beginning, I suspected that you were related to the Chaos Walker. I made up my mind. If you're going to London, I'll go with you. I hope that after you obtain the position of Pharaoh, you can find something of sufficient value to give to the Bufo. That way, it will be more convenient for me to follow you. Sure, with such a rechargeable, atavistic body joining in, Han Dong was naturally very happy. By the way, Overlord Meritus, I mainly lived and grew up in the Holy City as a human, so I don't really understand the rules and hierarchy of the hybrid demon world. Just now, he had heard the meaning of those dark creatures. Their main belief was the old king related to gray matter, but at the same time, they lived in London, which was ruled by their mother. According to the Night Order's information, this biological mother should be a lower king who controlled the darkness. How could the hybrid demons believe in 2 old kings at the same time? Haha, as expected, you don't know anything, although they all belong to the category of old kings. But the 3 levels of upper, middle, and lower are just for the convenience of understanding king and the definition given. The difference is still very big. Perhaps there are some people among you humans who understand, but you just don't say it. After all, once it is said, it may cause panic among all humans. Even if humans are given 500 years of development, they may not be able to touch the upper level existence. Since Han Dong saw King in Perugia, he also realized this point. He even doubted the meaning of the Great Expedition to a certain extent. Meritus continued, the upper level existence is something we can't imagine or touch. Who said that the king's subordinates can't become kings? As long as you reach a specific standard, you can write your name on the surface of a certain door. Han Dong was shocked. You mean the lower king who manages London is also a believer of the Chaos Walker? Well, to be precise, she should be a former believer. However, when she completed the coronation, she was completely out of control and formed her own faction. The establishment of Dark London is her independent performance when she became a king. However, she still maintains contact with the Chaos Walker, and even as a branch, she maintains the customs of worship in the past. Rumor has it that this old king of London has some eccentricities, so be careful. Becoming a king, it's still too far away for me, and the difficulty of becoming a king is much higher than touching the mythical level. Let's take it slow. Listening to such a huge leap of words, Han Dong might have been shocked in the past. But after seeing the gray old king and seeing the full picture of Black Tower World, Han Dong just smiled. There was nothing to be surprised about. The bigger the world, the more he couldn't see the boundary. The more fascinated Han Dong was. The current node of Prometheus was an important step for him to explore the truth of the world. Miss Mary, do you want to see a wider world with me? That depends on whether you have the ability to take me away from the Bufo. Node War, 10th hour. With the beast fighting organization in the southern part of the civilian area as the center, an uprising with the purpose of overthrowing slavery and establishing a new dynasty was set off. The leaders were two famous high priests. Most of the slaves who were oppressed by the slavery system immediately responded to the call. Moreover, Han Dong had asked the two high priests to publicly announce that the pharaoh had completely given up on the civilian district. In the previous few attempts to retake the civilian district, the pharaoh had used the civilians as bait many times. The slaves were only treated as tools and not as lives. At the same time, as an invader, Han Dong beautified himself as the leader of the uprising. He used his experience of climbing step by step in the beast fighting coliseum as a low-level slave and gave an uprising speech in many densely populated areas in the civilian area. He didn't add the slightest influence of crazy laughter. He relied on his personal experience to arouse the dissatisfaction and disgust of the slavery system deep in the hearts of the civilians. However, there was the most important point. The townspeople, who had been placed in the dark corners of the civilian area in advance, had already started a purge plan early on. All the people in power in the civilian area who were closely related to the pyramid were secretly eliminated to prevent them from causing trouble during the uprising process. Of course, the people in power who also had the idea of an uprising would naturally be kept. Just like that, the first fire of the uprising was ignited in the beast fighting coliseum. Because of the limitations of the slavery system, and through the efforts of the high priests and Han Dong, the fire finally spread throughout the civilian area. In this way, the forces under Han Dong's command were further expanded and had already fulfilled one of the requirements for victory in the Node War. They had completely surrounded the pharaoh's forces. The Node War had reached the most important and also the most tragic stage. As long as Han Dong gave the order, the army would enter the first ring and have a direct confrontation with the Nine Pillars Corporation. Chapter 987. Just as Han Dong was establishing his image as the leader of the uprising in the civilian area, Pharaoh Ed Lewis was naturally not idle. Although he had abandoned the civilian area and placed the main battlefield in the first ring and the pyramid area, there were other movements in private. The death of a high priest, the betrayal of two high priests, and the failure of the Wind God's invasion shook Ed's self-confidence, and a little anxiety grew in his heart. At present, the priest in charge of information collection was reporting the situation. According to the information sent back by the dead trainee priest and the person in charge of the relevant organizations in the civilian area, there are a large number of residents from that strange town in the civilian area. Each of them has terrifying and strange abilities. In addition, from the transmission report of the wormhole, it can be roughly seen that most of the residents have left the town. We could try to go around and capture their town. Maybe we can cut off the energy source of these strange townspeople or find their identity information in the town, or even related weakness information. Ed nodded. Once the town is attacked, the townspeople in the civilian area will inevitably quickly return to defend. At the same time, we also need to consider the space transfer of the atavistic body. I will conduct a lightning raid. Before the raid, I will send people to block the space around the town. The lightning raid is limited to 5 minutes. Once the time is up, no matter the progress, we will immediately withdraw. I still want to place the main battlefield in the pyramid. After all, if they want to win the Node War, they must explore the pyramid and defeat me. There is no need to focus on the outside. Lightning raid? Who do you want to send? Is the biological skeleton ready? It has been prepared according to your instructions. Pharaoh, you want to go in person? Although the skeleton is only connected to your consciousness, it is still risky. If you can't get rid of your consciousness before death, it will cause serious damage to your body's consciousness. The biological skeleton is made with me as a template. According to the default values, it can exert about 80% of its strength. Since it is a node war of the same level, I don't think anything can kill me instantly. Pharaoh, which high priest do you want to bring with you for the lightning raid? I will inform them now. No, let the high priest stay in the pyramid and prepare for battle. I will bring 10 embryo priests to explore the situation in the town. As long as I can find the town's data interface, I will be able to grasp all the information and weaknesses of the townspeople. Lord Pharaoh, please be careful. Even the Eye of Horus could not spy on this small town. To be able to compress a world to the size of a small town, the node holder must be a special person. It's precisely because of this that I don't want to use my core combat power. Even if something were to happen to me in the town, I would only lose a biological body and 10 embryonic priests that could be reconstructed. About 10 minutes passed. The information priest in front of him received the information and immediately reported. Pharaoh, the biological skeleton and the embryo priest have been sent through the underground secret passage to a safe area 200 meters away from the town. The basic debugging has been completed. You can access it at any time. Yes, Ed, who came from Turing modeling, was proficient in information transmission. The biological neural network in Fairy's capital had been established before Ed became a pharaoh. But in Ed's view, the neural network set up in Fairy's capital was a mess. After he became a pharaoh, he spent several years to rebuild the network in Fairy's capital. Immediately, a black metal line was derived from the back of his head and connected to the independent network of the pyramid. In the blink of an eye, Ed Lewis had appeared on the cement road 200 meters away from Reedtown. The biological skeleton looked like a biological exoskeleton armor. Since Ed himself was the template, it could exert the same ability. At the same time, an underground transportation facility beside Ed transported a total of 10 large eggs and 10 sturdy, strictly selected slaves. The eggs sensed the presence of the host and immediately hatched a white, sleek facehugger that pounced on the face of the slaves. Alien technology, in addition to the god-making technology, it was a rapid cultivation method. In a short period of time, the bodies of the slaves split open from the middle, and a humanoid, white-skinned life crawled out. What was born was not an alien, but a humanoid life form. On the surface of their bodies, there was a fine human body line diagram drawn like a carefully designed individual. Each of them had the ability of an official priest. The most important point was that these small embryonic priests could be used as the pharaoh's personal nourishment. There was a metal interface in the back of the neck for Ed to connect with a data line to achieve energy replenishment, ultra-fast regeneration, and other characteristics. In this way, Ed went to Reedtown with the idea of not losing a single soldier, try to get detailed information about the townspeople in advance. Due to the departure of Demon Spirit Elisa, the Silent Hill effect in Reedtown was completely lifted and no longer shrouded in white fog. But there was still one thing that was strange. There was an artificial sun made by the Sun Temple in Fairy's capital. Currently, the sun was shining directly on Fairy's capital. However, Reedtown was pitch black, and no light could penetrate it. Some kind of lightless enchantment. Or is it that the town itself is an independent world with its own world system inside, so it will not be affected by the outside environment? The pharaoh, who was using the biological skeleton to move, was not worried about anything and led the embryonic priests into the town. The street lights seemed to be a little unstable and kept flashing. With just one step, it felt like they had completely left Fairy's capital and arrived in another world. Palm Street. The street was empty, and all the strange auras had disappeared. Thousands of metal lines protruded from the pharaoh's back. They were equipped with high-definition cameras and carried out a detailed search of the buildings on both sides of the street. On the one hand, they were looking for townspeople who had not left. On the other hand, they were looking for any network connection so that they could quickly obtain relevant information. Sure enough, all the townspeople have joined the war? Maybe the relevant information has been destroyed. At this moment, the flashing street lights suddenly went out. Due to the lightless field isolating everything, even if Ed wanted to simulate the surrounding situation through data simulation, all he got was darkness. Self-made light sources, including biological illuminators, flashlights, and primitive torches, were all useless. The light could not spread out and was rejected by the lightless field. Just as Ed felt uneasy and was about to leave the town temporarily, sizzle, the street lights lit up again. The embryonic priests who had been beside him were gone. At the same time, in front of Ed's eyes, under the street lights, 10 times away, he could vaguely see a thin and tall, faceless man in a suit. What is it? Ed was about to activate the high-definition camera to enhance his vision and carefully observe this man. The street lights went out again. About 5 seconds later, when the street lights lit up again, the thin and tall figure moved forward again and stood under the 9th street light. Ed smelled a danger that he had never felt before and immediately turned to run, trying to leave the town. The street lights went out again. Even though Ed had changed his direction and ran a distance behind him, when the streetlights lit up again, the lanky figure was still under the 8th streetlight that was right in front of him. This slow approach was like a countdown, and when the time was up, Ed's death would be announced. Ed did not dare to take the risk. After all, the most important thing was the war that was about to break out in the first ring. He decisively gave up the plan to invade the town. However, abnormal data fluctuations have been detected. The consciousness connection cannot be cut off. What? This is my own consciousness, and it is also the connection line that I set up myself. How can the lack of light here affect the transmission of data at the level of data? What the hell is this? As the street lights flickered, the thin and tall figure was constantly approaching. It was only a distance away from the streetlight. Ed gritted his teeth and directly detonated the built-in bioenergy battery of the biological skeleton. In the form of a light source, it completely self-destructed. The instantaneous explosion of ultra-high-intensity photon radiation dispersed the lightless field to a certain extent. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ed successfully transmitted his consciousness back to the main body. Ed's main body, who was sitting in the Pyramid Divine Eye Room, had a trace of fear in his eyes. His whole body was steaming, and he was gasping for breath. No one is allowed to approach the town. Focus on the war that is about to break out. Ridley Town, Mayor's Office. The mayor held a well-preserved skull in his hands and found an empty space in the storage cabinet to put it down. He also marked it with the words Prometheus as a souvenir. Chapter 988. In the civilian area, in a biological building with a heart structure. This was originally the control center of the civilian area and the pyramid, leveled heart. Now, this place was designated as a temporary base for operations by Han Dong. At the bottom of leveled heart, under the strengthening effect of Silent Hill, a real heart room was derived. The wall surface was even slightly beating, and blood was constantly seeping out of the wall cavity. Such a heart conference room could completely cut off the spine of the Eye of Horus. At present, under Han Dong's call, all the important figures involved in this battle were present. 1. Meat and execution, 2 high priests. 2. Except for the mayor, the 10 demons of Ridley, including Togu, the original 8th demon, and residents with special strength who could reach the level of quasi-10 demons. 3. Holy City, Toad, Team, and Dragon City Team. On the eve of the meeting, Elisa suddenly sensed something. A group of people just tried to invade Ridley. What's the situation? With the mayor inside, anyone who goes and will only end up dead. Due to the characteristics of Ridley, the mayor is almost impossible to defeat inside, unless there is a high-level intervention. As a shareholder, Han Dong was naturally aware of this. It was precisely because of this that Han Dong felt at ease to put all the townspeople in Ridley, and even gave the mother to the mayor for safekeeping. It seemed that the mayor did not contribute, but in fact, the mayor's role in the war was irreplaceable. Due to the mayor's existence, Han Dong did not have to worry about the town being invaded and the mother as problem at all. After that, when Han Dong sat in the pharaoh's position, he would definitely take out some things related to the source of the world in the world of Prometheus to return the mayor's favor. After a short interlude, Han Dong returned his vision to the front. Other than the 10 demons at the conference table, there were 3 other people who had reached the level of quasi-10 demons. 2 of them were Nightmare Freddy and Leatherface Thomas, both from the demonic club. The reason why the 2 of them were allowed to join as an exception was because the 2 of them, along with Miles and Jason, were the famous 4 demonic humans of Ridley Town. At that time, Han Dong would specially arrange for the 4 of them to lead the humanoid demon club to launch a brutal attack on one of the shrines. No one knew which shrine would be chosen. Other than that, there was also a special member who joined the team, a new townsfolk who had just been promoted to Dry Town not long ago. If one didn't look carefully, it would be easy to miss this person. There was an old man sitting in the corner. He was thin and slightly hunched, wearing a white singlet and cloth shorts. Many parts of his skin and flesh had fallen off to the extent that the white bones inside could be seen. He gave off the aura of a resurrected person. At first glance, one would think that he was an ordinary undead. Due to the loss of his chin, his vocal system was affected, and he could only make a single sound. General store owner, Mr. Aha, ranked number 11 in Ridley Town. Han Dong had used the Small World Ghost Stories node to exchange for shares in Ridley Town. As someone who had already touched the ceiling in the Ghost Stories world, Mr. Aha was naturally chosen by the mayor and successfully passed the test to become one of the townsfolk. Now, Mr. Aha had passed an extremely difficult qualification test and obtained the title deed to Ridley Town's Central Street. He had opened his own general store. Han Dong also liked Mr. Aha's specialty. He had specially called him to participate in this meeting. In the upcoming battle, Mr. Aha would be the special support for individual units, providing resources from the general store for each team. After all, Mr. Aha was a walking general store. Aha. Seeing Han Dong greet him, Mr. Aha also responded enthusiastically. In a way, it was Han Dong who helped him realize his wish of promotion. Jumping from a small world to a medium world was not necessarily a good thing. Ridley Town could be said to be one of the best promotion options for a creature of destiny in a small world. Next, I will arrange for you to be the leaders of the 9 siege teams in the meeting. You will face the 9 Pillar Gods Company, which is guarded by a god. If you have any objections, directly raise them after the allocation. The Sun God Temple will be invaded by the Dragon City team that is most familiar with this temple. I will also provide you with the remaining forces of the White Giant and the God of Abnormality. The Temple of the Earth God will be in charge of the transportation and road construction of Shindu. It even includes the overall planning of the underground area of Shindu. The internal factory is also responsible for the maintenance of the sandworms in Shindu. Director Sam will lead the members of the farm and the neighborhood committee to invade by harvesting souls to minimize the damage to the temple. The Temple of the Sky is equivalent to an astronomy company. It is responsible for the comprehensive monitoring of the planet where Shindu is located and collecting information from the surrounding galaxies. Director Richard will lead the hospital's forces to invade this temple. God Temple of the Netherworld King. This God Temple is under the command of Togo Gonzalez and the members of the Mystic sect to attack and occupy it. Since the Netherworld here has already been destroyed by me, the mission to attack and occupy it is much easier. If Togo completes the mission in advance, find a connection between master and servant, and come directly to the pyramid to find me. The Temple of Chaos will be in charge of the war in Shindu. It is also the arsenal of Shindu. It will be fully suppressed and occupied by the demonic club. A fierce battle is inevitable. There is no need to worry about the damage to the temple and the surrounding area. We just need to minimize the loss of personnel as much as possible. The Temple of the Wind will be in charge of the Temple of the Wind. The Wind God in this temple has already fought with Director Richard once. Demps and the others will be in charge. The Temple of the Rain will be in charge of all the work related to water. It also includes the economic regulation of the Blackwater currency and the division and control of the original Blackwater in cooperation with the pyramid. Alessa will lead the residents related to water to occupy this place and minimize the damage as much as possible. The Temple of Breeding will be in charge of the company's research institute. It is in charge of the cultivation, breeding, and creation of Blackwater. The clerk, Miss Ferna, will be in charge. You should be very interested in this aspect. The Temple of Nature will be attacked by the 2 high priests and the militia of the civilian area. This is the arrangement of the war against the 9 temples. At the same time, the number 8 crooked neck, Charlie Ambrina, who runs an antique shop, and the number 11 grocery store owner, Mr. Aha, will be in charge of the dynamic supply of war materials. Finally, I have a very important request. When dealing with the false gods in the temple, suppress them as much as possible and extract the divinity from their bodies. If everyone can do it, when I sit on the throne of the pharaoh, I will allow you to choose the corresponding precious rewards in the pyramid's treasury. As for me, I will enter the pyramid in advance when you and the 9 pillar gods start a full-scale war. Chapter 989. The real key to this war was not the 9 Pillars Company. It was the pyramid that ruled God's capital. If they only attacked the 9 Pillars Company, the pyramid located in the center could provide them with an endless supply of energy. At the same time, the Eye of Horus could also pass through the fog of war and report the information of the invaders to the 9 Pillars Company in real time, making the attack extremely difficult. No matter how powerful Ridley was, it was difficult to win by simply attacking, and they would have to pay a huge price. A team of people must go inside the pyramid and create large-scale civil strife, so that the pyramid would not have time to care about the war between the 9 Pillars Company and could not even provide any assistance. The task of invading the pyramid naturally fell on Han Dong, who had once served as an apprentice priest in the pyramid. At the same time, Lord Meritus and Miss Jane, who were mobile power sources, would accompany Han Dong throughout the invasion. At the end of the meeting, General Meat requested a private conversation with Han Dong. The Black Pyramid is the crystallization of the wisdom of the wise white giant and the pinnacle of human wisdom. It could be regarded as an independent life. And every time the pharaoh ascends, he will optimize and transform the Black Pyramid to a certain extent. And the one with the deepest transformation is the current pharaoh. Speaking of this, Han Dong recalled the exaggerated scene of the pharaoh's descent when he rescued the mother in the Black Pillar prison. Ed Lewis's back was connected to hundreds of millions of cables, and each cable could find a corresponding node inside the pyramid. To what extent can he do it? The fat piled on General Meat's face made a bitter face. As far as I know, the pyramid and the pharaoh are one. The structure of the pyramid will change according to the pharaoh's consciousness. In addition to the high priest's private area, the pharaoh can also monitor the situation in any corner of the pyramid. The stone used to build the pyramid originated from the obsidian produced by the white giant. It has its own magnetic field and the characteristics of the material itself. Your friend's space ability can't be used normally. You once served as an apprentice priest under Terra, so you should know very well how strong the energy isolation of the pyramid is. Han Dong replied with a smile, "Well, it is because I have lived in the pyramid as a trainee priest for a period of time that I chose to do this. According to my observation, the pyramid is not absolutely perfect. Although it was almost one with the current pharaoh, there is still a way to break it. If I am unable to break through the pyramid from the inside, it will be very difficult for you to obtain victory against the 9 pillar gods." Boss Meat nodded. Sneaking into the pyramid alone is indeed better than entering in a group. But the difficulty is still beyond our imagination. If you can really disrupt the pyramid system from the inside, so that the pyramid is unable to provide reinforcements and assistance to the 9 Pillars Company, I, Meat Man, am willing to follow you for the rest of my life. I will never have any thoughts of rebellion. Node War. Hour 18. The mist in the civilian area dissipated, or rather, all of it returned to the body of the demon spirit, Elisa. Different exits of the civilian district, second ring road. Teams with different styles rushed towards their respective target areas. Except for the Dragon City team that attacked the Temple of Sun and the army led by the two high priests that attacked the Temple of Nature, the scale of the army was relatively large. The rest of the teams were small and medium-sized, all less than 100 people. The Vanguard team was about to enter the first ring area and set foot on the territory of the Nine Pillars Company. Buzz! A beam of light shot out from the top of the pyramid and went straight to the sky. At the same time, the central temple of the Nine Pillars Company also shot out a corresponding beam of light and connected with it, forming a powerful, brilliant barrier that completely enveloped the first ring area. When a Vanguard team tried to cross the barrier, they were immediately burned by a kind of soul. A resident with the nature of an evil spirit had an arm directly burned off, and it could not be healed. This kind of brilliant light enchantment could restrain the evil spirits, ghosts, and monsters from Reader Town to a certain extent. The army had to slow down their attack and temporarily stop outside the barrier. Dean Richard, Goose Sue, Dimps, the clerk, and other existences who had enough knowledge of barriers immediately deciphered this layer of brilliant barrier emitted by the pyramid. Ed Lewis, who was sitting in the room of the Divine Eye, sneered. It seemed that he had been freed from the dark fear of Ridley Town. It was also because Ridley Town had been invaded by the darkness that he had chosen to use half of the pyramid's energy to power the brilliant barrier. According to Ed Lewis's development plan for Shundu, when Shundu had grown to a certain level, this sandworm city would break out of its shell and abandon its original planet. At that time, the brilliant barrier would envelop the entire Shundu, which was also the sandworm, and begin its journey into the universe. It's impossible to close the brilliant barrier from the outside. If you want to attack, you have to endure the burning of the brilliant light. You evil monsters from the world of darkness, under this kind of brilliant light, it should be very uncomfortable. The brilliant light of Shundu will crush all darkness, and if that's not enough, I will personally crush you. There was a certain amount of anger in Ed Lewis's heart. It was not because Han Dong had kidnapped the mother, nor was it because of the planar war. It was because he had been humiliated by someone in Ridley Town. Activate war mode and let these invaders see the strength of Shundu. AI gave the order. The ground of the entire first ring area trembled, the intensity of which was equivalent to a magnitude 10 earthquake. The corresponding 9 temples began to shake violently and gradually separated from the ground and floated up on their own. It gradually stopped 100 meters above the ground. At the same time, 9 individuals exuding strong divinity slowly walked out of the temple gate and stood on the platform, looking down at the invaders outside the barrier. Their figures were one size larger than ordinary people, and they wore gold ornaments that matched their attributes. There were also clear tattoos on their skin. Sun God, a white-haired old man with a sun crown on his head and a sun scepter in his hand, had a rather exaggerated sun imprint on his back. The brilliant light released by him was even stronger than that of High Priest Meanies. Earth God, Gab, a strong man with dark skin and rock-like muscles all over his body. A hammer that was about 10 meters long and far larger than his body landed behind him. The rock-like man crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked down at the invaders with disdain. Sky God, Nut, a woman with stars all over her body and blue crystal blood vessels flowing all over her body, held a sky-blue water bottle in her hand. While observing the invaders below, she felt a certain heretical cosmic energy, which made her show a slightly annoyed expression. Underworld God, Osiris, a special mummy with green decay as the physical manifestation of the body. Green was vitality, and decay was death. Holding a crank, he carefully observed the invaders below, as if he was looking for the culprit who destroyed the netherworld underworld. War God, Seth, an Egyptian war god with a bald head and dark skin, was wearing golden armor and carrying an arsenal with him. Following him out of the temple were 100 brave and skillful desert warriors. Each of them possessed superb combat skills. They could easily jump down from the temple platform that was suspended 100 meters in the air and participate in this war. Wind God, Shu, as described previously, a handsome blue-haired man stared at President Richard with unblinking eyes, full of fear. Rain God, Tevnut, torrential rain shrouded the temple alone. A woman with a lioness tail bathed in the torrential rain, revealing a ferocious look. She held a living snake's scepter in her hand, as if she could not wait to participate in this battle. Breeding God, Lephis, she had a beautiful face and used her pink fleshy wings as a bed, lying on her side at the edge of the platform. Dense life force continued to spread out, so much so that the surrounding ground began to grow out fleshy plants that looked like babies. The god of nature, Isis, in front of the temple covered by dense vegetation, there was a green bud growing. A middle-aged woman was kneeling in it, begging for nature to become one with her and drive away this group of dirty invaders. The 9 pillar gods appeared. They were the strongest subordinates of the current pharaoh Ed Lewis, and they were also the leaders of the future expansion of the universe. Chapter 990. The greed of humans was limitless. The humans of ancient Egypt reached the peak of intelligence and were discovered by the white giant who created them. He chose some of the elites and brought them back to planet Libra 233 to cultivate, trying to use humans to expand their culture. However, they quickly learned knowledge from the Creator. Through this method, the intelligent humans who rapidly developed society, civilization, and science were like a hungry python that had drilled out of its nest, unsatisfied. They were not satisfied with the white giant's strict control of the black water. They were not satisfied with the white giant's blockade of some core knowledge. They were not satisfied with the white giant's closed management of them. In the end, they planned a rebellion. They overthrew the Creator and seized sovereignty. At the same time, they gained dominance. In addition to greed, another root of inferiority, arrogance, began to grow. For some people in power, arrogance had surpassed greed. Humans imprisoned the only white giant, Mother, underground and maximized the exploitation of the black water. They deliberately kept a part of the white giant's remnants and further explored their technology through captivity. Humans knew very well that the white giant had a kind of God-making technology designed to the origin of species. The pharaoh, who stood at the top, accepted and rejected the culture passed down from ancient Egypt. The main reason for the rejection was that in mythology, the definition of God was supreme and the pharaoh was just a spokesperson. Why should humans kneel before God? This was the idea of the first pharaoh of Shundu after the rapid development of technology, rapid insight into the knowledge of the universe, and overthrow the Creator. So he began to build the temple of the 9 pillar gods. He built the temple on the periphery of the pyramid to show that he stood above God, but this formalism was not enough to satisfy the pharaoh's arrogance. He wanted to follow the blueprint of the ancient Egyptian gods and build a divine army for him to command. After 7 generations of pharaoh, God's mold Egyptian gods as blueprint, God's source, the essence of divinity obtained through the white giant's technology, through devout rituals, sacrifice of life, and the power of the world, and all the basic facilities were ready. But the process of injecting God's source failed repeatedly. That was until the arrival of a participant of fate, Ed Lewis, who took over the throne as the 8th pharaoh. Ed was also very interested in the God-making plan and immediately focused all his attention on this grand project. By integrating the knowledge of the computer field into the God-making technology and introducing the basic concept of the integrated circuit, he successfully injected the divine source into the mold and obtained a divinity that could steadily output divinity. At this point, Shundu, a Kamigan, entered a new era, and Ed became the only existence in history who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the first pharaoh. But because the godhood was extremely picky about its host, the rejection reaction could instantly annihilate a priest. For a time, There was no one in Luoyang who could bear such a godhead. Therefore, Ed Lewis used his royal power to change the laws and the basic operation of Luoyang. 1. Introduction of the policy on slavery in a stage-type world. 2. At the same time, replace traditional currency with standard black water and advocate that all humans use black water to transform themselves. 3. Set up different stages of assessment, and the most important, God's chosen assessment. Under such a system, individuals with strong adaptability to the black water stood out and obtained the title of High Priest. At the same time, and the most important point, in the God's chosen assessment, individuals who showed a divinity match would be tried to accept the divinity. Ed's great change was very successful, and he became a pharaoh who stood above the gods in the true sense. The temple was suspended in the air. The 9 pillar gods stood in front of the platform, looking down at the invaders below. Together with the brilliant waterfall from the sky, this scene was filled with a strong sense of epic. The brilliant waterfall was not just a protective barrier. The first ring and the pyramid were bathed in this intense light, and if the invaders wanted to attack, they would have to endure the light. Such a spectacular scene even shook some of the civilian militia from the civilian district. However, the residents of Reed Town, who were scattered in different areas, did not have much of a change in expression. They just stood quietly in front of the brilliant waterfall, waiting for a certain order. Dean Richard collected a part of the brilliant essence through the void crystal in his hand and handed it to Charlie Amberner, the crooked neck, and Mr. Aha, the grocery store owner. About 10 minutes passed. Mr. Aha found a lot of strange raw materials from the depths of the grocery store and handed them to the 8th demon, the crooked neck. Han Dong was lucky that he did not encounter the crooked neck during the confrontation with Reed Town, or else he would have been in quite a troublesome or even fatal situation. The unique items held by the crooked neck were Evil Umbrella, A, and Magic Top Hat, B+. The Evil Umbrella was quite special. When put away, it could be used as a piercing weapon. Once it pierced the target, it would have a distortion effect, causing a lot of damage to the target. When unfolded, it could be used as a defensive weapon. The distorted patterns on the surface of the umbrella could distort all magic attacks. Mr. Aha provided the raw materials. Charlie released hundreds of antique shop workers through the Magic Top Hat. They looked like gray goblins and immediately made imitations of the evil umbrella on the spot. The final product would be blessed by the crooked neck himself, giving it the distortion characteristic. Just like that, the strange black umbrellas were distributed to the invaders. Except for the militia, the white giant, and the alien, they were not affected by the brilliant light. The 9 pillar gods, who chose to hide and defend, could not stop this process. Moreover, taking the initiative to leave the protection of the brilliant light barrier was not a wise choice. The 9 pillar gods and the pharaoh and the pyramid could only silently watch this group of simple townspeople hold up the black umbrellas in their hands one by one. The brilliant light waterfall sprinkled from the sky was like a sudden rainstorm to the townspeople. At the same time, they held up the black umbrellas in their hands and stepped into the area covered by the brilliant light waterfall. While holding the black umbrellas, a black substance slowly covered the entire body of the townspeople, equivalent to a fusion process. At that time, even if the black umbrellas were damaged, it could still ensure that the townspeople could move normally under the brilliant light. The blocking rate reached 90%. The moment they set foot in the 9 pillar gods company, war broke out. According to the pharaoh's arrangement, the company's own troops and defensive facilities would first stop the invaders. After the invaders' physical strength had been reduced to a certain extent, the 9 pillar gods would personally move and kill them. However, the god of war, Seth, among the 9 pillar gods, could not hold back and jumped down from a height of 100 meters with 100 desert warriors, directly colliding with the demonic army that had come to this land. Seth, with a golden greatsword in one hand and a black crystal axe in the other, was about to kill the enemy camp. Moonlight shone down. 3 big men holding large black umbrellas had already surrounded him. Chapter 991. with the three ultimate demonic humans besieging the god of war, Seth, who took the initiative to attack. The god-slaying war officially began. Various biological cannons appeared in the company's territory, bombarding the invaders fiercely. Boom, flesh cannonballs with nerve synapses attached to their tails kept falling to the ground. Different from the conventional cannonballs, this strange flesh cannonball would cause a two-stage explosion. The first stage was when the first contact was made. The impact of the cannonball would be used to detonate the outer bone layer. At the same time of the explosion, a large number of bone fragments would be produced, tearing the surrounding organic flesh. After the outer bone layer detonated, a flesh sac would be left in place. The second stage, if the flesh sac sensed the existence of enemy life within 5 meters, it would self-detonate, causing an explosive impact and deep acid corrosion to the target. If there was no enemy life within 5 meters, the flesh sac would hatch, giving birth to a self-destructor full of acid and blood. It would automatically find the target and detonate. This was the unique weapon technology in the technological background of God's capital. It could effectively give a directional explosion to tear the enemy apart. The bombardment came one after another. However, most of the casualties were from the militia, the remnants of the White Giant, and the alien army. The residents from Ridley Town held black umbrellas and invaded at their own pace, either fast or slow. They were completely unaffected by this biological weapon. They each had their own unique defensive abilities, or they could summon the dead to block the attack, or they could condense ice layers, flesh walls, and other defensive layers outside their bodies, or their bodies could perfectly regenerate when they were subjected to physical bombardment. No matter how intensive the bombardment of the invasion point by the major companies was, the townspeople maintained the posture of holding umbrellas and steadily advanced. Seeing this, the armed forces belonging to the companies faced the enemy head-on. The company personnel wearing exoskeleton armor used the distortion of the black water to change the action of the townspeople holding umbrellas. Looking around, although war had broken out in 9 theaters. However, the situation in 2 theaters, whether it was the aura, feeling, or overall progress, was completely different from the other theaters. 1. In the area corresponding to the Sky Palace, only Dean Richard walked here alone. There was no umbrella. A mass of color wrapped around Dean Richard's body could isolate all the effects of the brilliant light. Any flesh cannonball that locked onto Dean Richard would be imprinted with a void mark during the flight and undergo super-fast disintegration and sublimation. It would disappear into thin air before it reached him. Seeing such a strange situation, in addition to the warning from the wind god, an inexplicable panic swept through the area. When the higher-ups of the company tried to pry into the inner workings of Director Richard again, they directly degenerated and turned into a pile of indescribable rotten meat. When Sky God Nuth examined the invaders earlier, he felt a sense of uneasiness. Now, the source of this uneasiness was within her territory. He immediately ordered all employees to stay in the company to prevent unnecessary damage. She would personally face this being that was also exuding divinity, but was extremely chaotic. 2. In the company area corresponding to the breeding temple. The first thing to arrive was not the invaders, but an elegant singing voice. La la la, any staff who heard the song within 100 meters would have their arms grow out of their ears and end their lives with a brain piercing. Following that, a slim woman with long hair parted in the middle walked in from the front yard of the company. Only her plump lips were exposed. Wearing a tight-fitting one-piece dress and a pair of red-high heels that were 10 centimeters high, the clerk walked on this land with a rare charm. At the same time, behind the clerk were 4 burly men in suits and exuding a strange aura. These 4 people were all security guards in the town hall, specifically serving the clerk and the mayor. They were not registered as townspeople, but they enjoyed better treatment than ordinary townspeople. They had exaggerated figures that only existed in manga, an extremely exaggerated inverted triangle body structure. The ratio of the upper body to the lower body reached a terrible 4:1, just like a walking muscle polymer. One of them wore a steel mask. One of them stared at the messy, curly hair that completely covered his face. One of them wore a more cartoonish skull mask. One of them had a pig's head covered with burns on his face. For security guards who belonged to the town hall held huge black umbrellas that matched their figures and sandwiched the clerk in the middle to ensure that she would not be burned by the light. In the face of the incoming biological cannonball, the security guards caught it with their huge palms and crushed it with brute force before the cannonball exploded. As for the armed personnel who attacked from the front, they only needed a slap. The exoskeleton armor that they wore flew out together with the staff's flesh and bones. Other than the difference in temperature, it was impossible to tell which piece belonged to the staff and which belonged to the equipment. Staring at the strange town hall troops, the god of breeding, Lephis, who was originally sleeping on the ground, had already changed to a sitting position and began to give birth crazily. The fleshy plants that grew around its body were stimulated by growth hormones, and in a short period of time, they formed a type of combat soldier with a trace of divinity. The invasion war successfully started in the first ring area. At this time, Han Dong was sitting on a roadside seat outside the area illuminated by the light, observing the overall situation through the magic eye. As expected of a warrior with divinity, even if it is a false god obtained through the form of a vessel and divinity, it can still rely on divinity to resist the fatal characteristics of the townspeople. The god of war, Seth, was actually able to fight against 3 ultimate demonic humans by himself. Divinity seems to be really strong. When I sit on the throne of the pharaoh, I can also study the source, classification, purity, and strength of divinity. On the surface, it seems that the false gods created by the pharaoh Ed are not simple characters. Even if they're used as vessels, they're still first-class existences. Bathing under the waterfall of light, their energy is almost endless. If I want to win, I have to break through from the inside. It's about time. The flames of war are already burning in various areas. The pharaoh Ed did not hesitate to use a large amount of energy to power the waterfall of light. The corresponding internal control of the pyramid will be relatively weak. A watery crystal bead was held in Han Dong's hand. It was the toad bead that symbolized the core of the atavistic body. It contained indescribable space energy. Gulp, the toad bead was swallowed by Han Dong. Then he skillfully laid down on the corpse cart beside him and squeezed together with Miss Jane. Then, with the help of Miss Jane's exclusive corpse package, the corpse bag and shroud, it was sealed and covered. Then, the clean corpse cart started to move on its own. It was like loading the engine of a top sports car in an invisible place. It broke through 103 seconds. The corpse cart, covered by the white cloth, sped through the gap of the battlefield. With a drift, it directly threw the body of the corpse cart into the area of light and headed straight for the pyramid. Chapter 992. In War Mode. Ed Lewis was completely integrated with the pyramid, and there were no loopholes to be exploited. No matter how Han Dong sneaked in, he would be detected at the first moment. Since there was no need to hide, Han Dong commissioned all the undead tied to the cart to move out and use all their strength to push the cart. The seemingly ordinary corpse cart directly reached the speed of a top supercar and went straight to the pyramid. During the war, the pyramid was in a completely sealed state. Han Dong, who was lying in the corpse bag, had no intention of sneaking in secretly, because when he was a probationary priest, he had tested the hardness of the stone door. Staring at the stone door in front of him, Han Dong transmitted his consciousness to the undead pushing the cart. This group of undead was very obedient and completely treated Han Dong's orders as the orders of their mistress. Go! Maximizing the power of the undead, the corpse cart collided with the stone door of the east entrance of the pyramid. Boom! At the cost of bending the baffle and breaking a wheel, the indestructible east door of the pyramid was broken. The pharaoh, who was in the divine eye room at the top of the pyramid, was not allowed to react at all. Buzz! The zipper was cut open. The The corpse bag placed on the surface of the cart was completely opened. What appeared from inside was neither Han Dong nor Miss Jane, but all the mummies from the tomb area. It had been 20 hours since they ate the mother's white meat in the Black Pillar prison. During this time, they had been resting in Meritus's toad belly, absorbing and digesting the mother's white meat and growing new white meat between their skeletons. It was like the undead in a game that was forced to put on a patch to grow meat. It was not just a change in appearance. More importantly, these mummies fully activated their abilities by the mother's white meat and all master a power that was compatible with themselves. Before the war, Han Dong said to Meat that the so-called Black Pyramid also had flaws. This was the result of Han Dong's discussion with the former chief engineer of Osiris, Hezebel, after reading the history of the pyramid's construction and personnel planning in the pyramid library. Compared to the fixed buildings in Han Dong's world, a living building that could be freely controlled by the pharaoh had many advantages, such as controllability, changeability, upgradability, and ease of expansion. Similarly, this kind of living building also has a technical problem, load, although it was not explicitly written in the book. However, through the pyramid's restrictions on the number of staff and priests, as well as Chief Engineer Blackpool's knowledge of biological buildings, Han Dong could infer a weakness of the pyramid, or rather, the weakness of all living buildings. Population load that even needed to provide a portion of energy in real time to support the population. Once the population exceeds the limit. Otherwise, the pyramid would have to provide more energy to support it. Otherwise, the activity of the pyramid would be affected, and it would become like a dead object, unable to change freely. Now, the invasion war was in full swing. Because Ed was attacked by the darkness in Ridley, he chose to use 60% of his core energy to create the brilliant waterfall. The operation of the pyramid itself still required 20% of the energy. There was not much energy left at the disposal. As long as the population in the pyramid exceeded the limit, it would inevitably lead to a significant decrease in its activity and could not be freely controlled. This was the breakthrough that Han Dong found. Kaka, the terrifying howls of the mummies resounded at the bottom of the pyramid. Countless mummies used Meritus's toad belly as a carrying space. They were all released the moment the cart crashed through the pyramid gate, not giving the pharaoh any chance to control it. Mummies with white flesh all over their bodies immediately spread out from the bottom of the pyramid like a tide. In an instant, the population load of the pyramid reached 500%. The staff and supervisors in the load monitoring room stared at the mummy frenzy at the bottom and were stunned for more than 10 seconds. Hurry and inform the pharaoh to close all the upper passages. Disaster is coming. The force of the corpse cart's impact was no joke, and it carried thousands of undead with it. The strong vibration caused by the impact was directly transmitted to the top of the pyramid. Ed, who was sitting on the throne, tried to control the pyramid with a large number of cables on his back and closed all the passages at the east entrance. However, when he carried out the relevant control, he felt an unusually obvious resistance. The stone walls and the ground that could be moved easily on normal days were now extremely slow, and even Ed felt that it was very difficult. However, as Ed observed the situation at the bottom with the eye of Horus, he directly smashed the gold inlay on the throne with a slap. At the same time, a message from the load monitoring room arrived. Pharaoh, the current population load has reached 500%. It has far exceeded the theoretical load. Such a serious overshoot will cause you to be unable to control the pyramid, and the basic structure will also be destroyed under the high-density population activities. Request to transfer 50% of the energy to provide a temporary load. No, of course not. Once 50% of the energy was transferred, the brilliant waterfall must be removed. In this way, the darkness in the town of Dry may radiate in, and these townsfolk will not be suppressed and become more ferocious. The situation on the battlefield may tilt. I will immediately block the passage from the bottom to the top, and then send all the priest troops and the Praetorian army to clean up the mummy army. Continue to monitor and report to me the population load at any time. Yes. Ed Lewis tried his best to suppress the anger in his body. Nicholas, what a good move. Not only did he use this group of mummies to break through the boundary of the Great Burial Area, but he also used them to find the flaws of the pyramid. At this moment, a voice was heard. Manager Ed, we request to join the team to eliminate the mummies. Maybe Nicholas is also mixed in. It was Tesla who made the request. The particle radiation team did not return after the settlement. They joined the Pharaoh's camp to participate in this node war. After all, the Pharaoh was Wangdu's engineer. Ed Lewis stared at Tesla and said solemnly, yes, you will move together with High Priest Seville and quickly kill the mummy army. Also, if you encounter Nicholas, you need to report to me first before you act. Prometheus is just a real node. It may be precious, but its real value is not as valuable as the four of you. In the future, you may become a powerful engineer leader who leads humans to reclaim the territory. Node war is my personal matter. You are not allowed to encounter any danger in this war. Good. Once we encounter Nicholas, we will report to you immediately. Ed continued to remind them, do not treat this person as a grade 2 knight or a participant of the same level. If you really encounter Nicholas, treat him as an enemy of the same level as me. You must be careful. Chapter 993. With the release of the mummy army, they spread crazily at the bottom of the pyramid. However, the corpse cart stayed where it was, as if it was waiting for news from a certain mummy. These mummies from the burial area basically had self-consciousness, and they regarded Han Dong as their savior and a true god. Han Dong connected his consciousness with the mummy army. 1. Through the movement of the army in the pyramid, he could roughly understand the route at the bottom of the pyramid and the distribution of guards. 2. Han Dong needed the mummies to search for a scent in the pyramid that could help him go deeper into the pyramid. Lord Anubis, I feel the scent of fear here. Using his consciousness, he transmitted his voice. The corpse cart moved on its own. Even in the narrow pyramid passage full of forks, the corpse cart could still achieve super-fast movement and drift. In a few minutes, it came to the passage that exuded the scent of fear. There were more than 30 mummies gathered here. Some could control bandages, some could spray acid, and some could even throw purple gas bombs from their palms. These were all abilities obtained by devouring white meat. As for the scent of fear that the mummies smelled, it came from behind one of the walls. Han Dong was still lying in the corpse bag to avoid being exposed. He used his little magic eye to see through the wall and ordered one of the mummies to act on his behalf. He stretched out his hand and grabbed a disc between the flat walls. Rotating the disc according to a certain sequence, a passage painted with white wall appeared. Judging from the freshness of the wall material, this secret passage should be newly built. Try your best to create chaos in the pyramid. Hold on for as long as you can. As long as you can hold on, I will let you live and regain your identity as a resident of Shundu. A simple sentence ignited the fighting spirit of the mummies. However, it was difficult to fulfill this sentence. Han Dong was very clear that the number of troops inside the pyramid was definitely not worse than any of the temples. Level 1 million mummies seemed to be a lot, but in fact, under the full strength of the priest group, they would not last long. Using the mummy army to break the pyramid's population limit was only the first step. If Han Dong wanted to create a bigger commotion in the pyramid, he would need the help of an insider. The only person Han Dong left in the pyramid was the High Priest Tutraman. When the Pharaoh first met Han Dong, he had already listed the High Priest as a possible traitor. Currently, the factory was completely sealed off. If Tutraman had remained in the factory, he would have been forcibly imprisoned by the Pharaoh until the end of the war. However, based on Han Dong's understanding of Terra, he was not someone who would give up easily. Besides, Tutraman had a chief engineer Blackpool by his side. Some things would become easier. The wheels slid along the newly built secret passage. The white paint on the walls was a rare liquid metal that could effectively isolate the black magnets that built the pyramid, creating an independent area. After passing through the 10-meter-long secret passage, they arrived at a small room with the same white background. Tara and Chief Blackpool were waiting for Han Dong's arrival in the white secret room. At the same time, they also brought along a group of elite priests that directly belonged to Tara. It's really slow. It's 3 hours slower than I expected. The cloth covering the corpse fell off by itself, and the body bag was cut open again. When Han Dong sat up from the body bag, he was only wearing a pair of shorts. Perhaps it had something to do with Miss Jane's misophobia. Looking sleepy, he did not look like he was in a war at all. He stretched his body and climbed out of the body bag. Sigh, not only do I need to conquer the 9-pillar temple and the pyramid, but I also need enough support from the people to win the war. Therefore, I wasted a lot of time in the civilian district. Ha! Just as I thought. High Priest Ku Yuan, you will definitely choose me. Moreover, with Chief Blackpool by your side, you will definitely be able to find the gap in the pyramid and hide temporarily. Tara showed a disdainful expression. Even if I don't choose you, I will still hide. After all, in the God's capital, I have the deepest relationship with you. You caused such a big commotion, and the Pharaoh wanted to imprison me out of vigilance. Let's briefly talk about the current situation. How did you sneak in? Han Dong directly said that the war had completely broken out, and that the world companions he brought were fighting against the 9-pillar gods. Hearing this, Tara and Blackpool, as well as the priests present, showed an expression of disbelief. They knew that the Pharaoh secretly controlled an army of gods that could invade the galaxy. They did not expect Han Dong to be able to fight against such an army. They thought that Han Dong found an opportunity to sneak in. Forget it. Ever since Han Dong broke through the tomb alone, Tara already knew that this young man was on a different level from him. He was no longer the probationary priest, but a young man who had the ability to sit on the Pharaoh's throne. Time is of the essence. With the support of the brilliant waterfall, the war outside will probably last for a long time. The mummies I use will not last for more than a few hours at most. We need to reach the energy zone of the pyramid before the population returns to normal and cut off the energy supply. Based on my guess, the Pharaoh should have used physical means to seal all the passages to the upper levels. Such an important energy zone should be located in the upper levels of the pyramid. Do you have a way to bring me there? There's a way, but once we are discovered, we will face the Pharaoh himself, the Forbidden Army, and the 8 priests who are absolutely loyal to the Pharaoh. At most, I can help you stall 2 high priests. Are you confident? As long as we can reach the energy zone, I am confident. Moreover, I did not come here alone. Han Dong lightly patted the cart. The original body bag had disappeared, and in its place was a flawless woman with a white cloth covering her body. As he stared at the corpse, Ku Yuan was shocked. First, he was shocked by the terrifying aura and some kind of powerful witchcraft coming from the corpse. Second, he smelled a familiar aura from the corpse. It was the aura of the brilliant light of a certain high priest. She killed meanies? That's right. Miss Jane is rank 5th in the worlds I lured in. That's roughly what happened. Phew, meanies died just like that. He was so arrogant and claimed to be the #1 high priest under the Pharaoh. All right, let's go. I am very familiar with the route to the energy zone. Chief Blackpool can also decipher the traps along the way. Oh, so you don't need my help on the way to the energy zone as long as we don't expose ourselves? Yes, as long as we open an entrance to the upper levels. Let your mummy army follow and disrupt the order of the pyramid. Cover us as much as possible. All right, I'll sleep for a while. Let one of the priests push the cart. Han Dong skillfully flipped over and carried Miss Jane back into the body bag. A stronger priest stepped forward and grabbed the handle. Just as he was about to push the cart, he suddenly realized that there were thousands of eyes staring at him from below the cart. The priest was so frightened that he quickly retreated. He did not know that these bound undead were just expressing their gratitude. After all, someone was helping to push the cart. Helpless, Tara could only push the cart himself. Chapter 994. When he first came to the world of Prometheus Han Dong was amazed by the biological technology developed in Shindu. Now, the secret of Shindu had been revealed, and the technology to create gods was more or less clear. However, there was one thing that Han Dong didn't understand, and that was the source of Shindu's energy. At least, Han Dong didn't see any building similar to a power station in the civilian area. According to the information in the library and the information given by Boss He Eyes, he could roughly guess that Shindu's energy came from the main energy area in the pyramid. All the black water extracted from the mother's body was stored here, and it was catalyzed, purified, and other processes. Different quality of black water had different uses. A part of the black water would be converted into fuel through a special device to meet the energy supply of Shindu. Even if there was a problem with the mother's body, the black water fuel stored in the energy area was enough to last for 3 months. Han Dong was quite curious about what kind of device could use the black water as fuel and also meet the biological energy supply of Shindu. Could such a device represent Shindu's biological industry? If possible, Han Dong also wanted to build a similar energy area in his own manner and transform the manor into a modern biological manor that was connected to the universe's technology. Of course, all of the above were Han Dong's personal interests. The most important thing was to sneak into the energy area and cut off the energy supply without destroying the energy device. At that time, the brilliant waterfall that shrouded the war zone would be closed, and the balance of the war would tilt towards his side. High Priest Tudalaman, hereinafter referred to as Tudalaman, in order to seize the pharaoh's position, he had already analyzed the structure of the pyramid clearly. During the time when he was in contact with He Eyes, he also shared the collected information with He Eyes, and together they studied the loopholes. Even if Han Dong didn't start an uprising, Tudalaman would one day disrupt the pyramid from the inside and shake the pharaoh's rule. The number of million-level mummies was just too many. Moreover, the mummies jumped out of the category of cannon fodder because they swallowed the white meat of the mother's body, and each of them had a certain level of fighting power. What was most outstanding was their regenerative ability as dead things. This caused the priest's purge operation to be much slower than expected. Under the cover of the mummies, Ku Yuan and the others followed the route that they had researched in advance and quickly moved through the most undetectable areas of the pyramid. The sealed stone walls that they encountered along the way were all solved by Chief Engineer He Eyes, and they kept moving towards the deepest area. However, this route did not lead to the energy area, but to a special place. Nicholas, you can come out now. We're here already? Han Dong was slightly surprised when he crawled out of the body bag. After all, he had yet to chat with Miss Jane, and he had not sensed any strong fluctuations from the outside world. How did he arrive here already? From Han Dong's point of view, the SBHYNX cat would definitely keep a tight watch on the energy district. If he wanted to enter, a huge battle would be unavoidable. Ku Yuan explained simply, in war mode, it is almost impossible to enter the energy zone from the front. The stability of the energy gate was comparable to the Black Pillar prison, and it was heavily guarded both inside and outside. Even if we had the chance to decipher the energy gate, we would still disturb the pharaoh. So I completely gave up on the idea of entering from the front. Due to a certain characteristic of the energy district, Chief Engineer He Eyes and I came up with a special method that allows us to sneak into the energy district secretly, but we will have to take a huge risk. The entrance is right here. Special method? Han Dong sniffed the stench in the air and looked around. This was a factory-like area filled with biological tissues. All kinds of nerve cables were laid out on the ground, and there were all kinds of strange large instruments inside. An indescribable production industry was going on here. It was completely automated, and there were no workers here. Normally, the technical priest group would check and test this place regularly to ensure that the automated production was going smoothly. However, due to the invasion of the mummies, the priest group also went down to help. High Priest Ku Yuan explained simply, "This is the battery workshop. It is here to create the biological batteries that the energy district needs. Next door is the human catalysis workshop. It is used to create the embryos of the batteries. Through a special biological catalysis workshop, the embryos can grow to the state of an adult in 2 days. The adult human that is catalyzed will be sent to the battery workshop to undergo compression molding, capacitor expansion, and other manufacturing processes to create a biological battery that meets the requirements. After testing and confirming that the battery meets the standards, it will be sent to the energy district through a special channel. This is how the gods convert the black water into energy. Although Han Dong was mentally prepared, he was still shocked by the battery technology in front of him. That's right, the black water can only be used through organic matter. As a mammal, humans are the most effective carriers of the black water. We have tried it before. Even if we use the white giant as the carrier, the energy produced is only about 85% of a human battery. Han Dong stared at the cruel battery production process and continued to ask, "This is how we sneak into the energy district." That's right. The transmission channel will only recognize the biological batteries that meet the standards. If you force your way in, the channel will be closed, and the alarm will be sent directly to the pharaoh. The process will be very uncomfortable, and you may even lose consciousness and die. Thank you, everyone. Just let me suffer here. As Han Dong opened his mouth, a surge of spatial energy overflowed from his body. It directly sucked Miss Jane, Akinara, Chief Blackpool, and the members of Akinara's priest group into the toad bead and temporarily stored in the toad's stomach. Time was tight. Han Dong did not hesitate to throw his body into the production line of the biological battery. Compression molding. 1. Completely destroy the spinal system through the execution machine to avoid the interference of the secondary nervous system. 2. Deeply compress the human body to form it into a spherical shape. Capacitor expansion. 1. Drill deep holes on the surface of the human body and implant electronic components that can expand capacitor and enhance sensitivity. 2. Put the human body into a fleshy sphere that can help release and recharge energy, battery shell. Finally, after a series of benchmark tests, the spherical battery will be sent to the energy district through a one-way fleshy channel. It was fine for Han Dong. As long as his brain was not forcefully destroyed, he could endure any pain. The test passed. Han Dong, who was made into a battery, was successfully sent to the energy district, the core area that provided energy for all of Shindu. The energy district was extremely large, about 100 meters high. The surrounding walls were made into energy circuit boards. Biological batteries were embedded in the grooves of the circuit boards. Injecting the black water used for production into the various biological batteries, and through directional genetic mutation, the biological batteries could produce. Its efficiency was comparable to a large nuclear power plant without any risk. Chapter 995. At the bottom of the pyramid, the particle radiation team was cleaning up the army of mummies. The one with the most unique performance was Tesla. The grenade could instantly kill the mummies without magic resistance, and the high-intensity alternating current could directly burn the liquid in the mummies, depriving them of their regenerative ability. It was extremely efficient in killing the enemy. Similarly, the decomposer Walter was also excellent. With just a touch, he could directly decompose a mummy into the most primitive molecules. Together with them, there was also a special high priest, Severe Dunamat. This person was one of the older high priests. He was proficient in ancient medicine and the biological anatomy passed down from the white giant. At the same time, he was also the pharaoh's personal doctor and was very loyal. He was assigned by Ed to lead the particle radiation team and provide assistance in all aspects. Severe's body was embedded with biological scalpels made of special materials. He could pop them out from his 10 fingers and perform ultra-fast cutting on the target's weak points. He could even cut off the mummy's life force. However, the number of mummies was still there, and it would take a long time to clean them up. Facing the tide of white flesh mummies, the more Tesla killed, the more he felt that something was not right. The same feeling of discomfort also appeared in the hearts of his teammates. Tesla whispered, This army of mummies was obtained by Nicholas after a long time of planning. The instantaneous release seriously exceeded the pyramid's population and reduced the activity to zero. Such a great opportunity only comes once, and there is a 90% chance that Nicholas is mixed in it. He will definitely not do nothing. Now that the war has broken out, the biggest impact on him is the brilliant waterfall. With such an opportunity, he will definitely target the energy area. We have to go there. Regarding Tesla's conclusion, High Priest Severe disagreed. The Pharaoh knows the importance of the energy area better than any of us. Not to mention the comprehensive monitoring of the Eye of Horus and the brute force High Priest group patrolling the energy area all day. During the war mode, the energy area is in a state of deep closure. Even our High Priest needs the permission of the Pharaoh to enter through the gate. If an intruder tried to decipher the door, the Pharaoh would be the first to know. Furthermore, even if the 9 pillar gods wanted to break open the door, they would need at least a few days. If they really wanted to break into the energy zone, they would be walking right into a trap and be directly suppressed by the Pharaoh. Have you considered the complete collapse of the great necropolis, the abduction of the mother, and the outbreak of the Node War? I will request permission from the Pharaoh to head to the energy zone. As long as the Pharaoh agrees, I will accompany you. Tesla's request was immediately approved by the Pharaoh. As Tesla released a power grid to temporarily seal the road, High Priest Seville was in charge of leading the way. After passing through layers upon layers of biomass doors that required multiple identity verifications, under the gaze of more than 100 monitors, the group arrived at the entrance of the energy zone. It was obvious that no one had been here. The door was in an absolute sealed state. I've already said that they can't invade this place. This door is the only entrance. Just by standing here, we're being monitored by the internal priests and the Eye of Horus. Once it senses the aura of an outsider, the door will automatically reinforce itself and transmit the information to everyone. Let's go in and take a look. They had the Pharaoh's special permission. A suction cup grew on the surface of the biomass door and attached itself to everyone's body. Through the suction method, it stuck to the surface of the door and slowly sank into the energy zone. The internal energy operation was normal, and the black water reserves were enough to last for 3 months. Now, more than half of the energy was gathered by the sun tablet placed at the top. It was emitted in the form of pillars of glorious light energy, forming a waterfall of glorious light that enveloped the battlefield. The brute force priests patrolled back and forth between the different floors. The technical priests in charge of energy control were also in charge of different areas to ensure the normal supply of glorious light energy. On the surface, there seemed to be something wrong. Tesla could not see any problems and asked the perceptive staff in the team, "Eva, did you find anything?" If I were Nicholas, I would definitely not go through the main door. Let me ask the staff here. Eva stopped the technical director. May I ask if there are any other staff passageways here other than the main door? In war mode, all staff passageways have been completely erased by the Pharaoh through the method of wall displacement. The only entrance is the main door. Is there any garbage dump or raw material delivery outlet? The garbage in the energy zone will be temporarily piled up in this area and will be transported out after the war. As for raw material delivery, there is one place. Where? Following the technical director's guidance, all the team members looked at the mechanical slide above. Bundles of fleshy bodies were pulled by muscle suspenders and accurately installed on different circuit boards. These are the necessary biobatteries in the energy zone. They are essential for energy conversion. Don't worry, the manufacturing process of biobatteries will completely kill the individual, eliminating the spine, strong electric current through the body, and body punching, etc. Even your physical body will completely die in this process. Moreover, only qualified batteries will be delivered. Tesla heard this and immediately suggested, "Please allow us to review each battery, or your staff can also participate." The number of biobatteries is more than 100,000. Now that we are in the middle of a war, the workload will be heavy. Our first task is to ensure the stability of the glorious light waterfall. No, we only need to check the batteries delivered today. If you're not free, let us do it. Since Tesla had the Pharaoh's handwritten instructions, the priest also allowed it. Okay, today's batteries, the meat is relatively fresh, and the degree of melanization is less than 10%. The engineering ladder is available for you to use, but please strictly follow the operation instructions. If the batteries are not in good contact, it may affect the output of the glorious light. Okay, if Tesla had met Han Dong for the first time, he would never have been so vigilant. But since the last time Tesla led a team to search the temple of Osiris, and Han Dong escaped from under his nose, his mindset had changed. The search began. Since it was Tesla's order, everyone's search was quite serious. About half an hour passed. Eva, who was riding the engineering ladder, was searching the middle layer of the E03 circuit board area and found a bio battery that had just been embedded. As Eva's palm fell on the surface of the fleshy battery, a familiar aura came from her fingertips, like lightning flashing through her nerves, instantly recalling the memory of being held hostage in the desert area. Just as Eva's eyes widened and she was about to scream, the bio battery that seemed to be dead suddenly stretched out an arm to cover her mouth, and the other arm was erected in front of her completely twisted head, making a should gesture. Miss Eva, long time no see. Chapter 996. In Eva's eyes, the production process of the biological battery was unbearable even for them. Moreover, the finished battery would pass inspection, so it was basically impossible for outsiders to sneak in. At first, it was also because of Captain Tesla's suspicion that Eva would consider this point. She didn't have much hope in the first place. The accident still happened. Just as Tesla was vigilant, Nicholas would always be able to get in through seemingly impossible gaps. The energy area was the ultimate goal of releasing the mummy army, but she didn't expect Nicholas to have already arrived. Because of the contact of their palms, the consciousness of the two was connected. The consciousness of the two was connected. Chill. Miss Eva, long time no see. The sudden sound transmission scared Eva so much that she didn't dare to speak, and even spontaneously trembled slightly. Ever since Eva was forcefully abducted by Nicholas in the desert, she was afraid, unable to understand, and had doubts from the beginning. So she didn't want to be enemies with Han Dong, this strange person. A seed had been planted in her heart by Nicholas, a seed of primitive fear, a seed of thought that would make Eva give up her resistance. He was really here. How'd he do it? How could his body be compressed to such an extent and still be fine? A lot of questions filled Eva's heart. Han Dong's voice continued. It's best not to let your teammates find out about the situation here. As a knight, I don't want to hurt you and your teammates. It's not that I'm arrogant. If I'm exposed, I'm sure I can kill all of you before Ed Lewis arrives. After finishing this sentence, Han Dong shared the situation in his body with Eva. First, the powerful aura from the atavistic body made Eva's whole body numb. Then, there were two auras hidden inside the atavistic body. One was the source of fear in the promotion assessment, corresponding to a powerful priest under the pharaoh. The other powerful aura had nothing to do with Luoyang. Eva's hair stood on end, as if she was in the ice pavilion in the corner of the morgue. These powers were superimposed, and Eva was sure that Nicholas was absolutely not exaggerating. At least she would be killed in the first place. At the same time, she also remembered what Manager Ed said because he didn't want them to be in danger. At this time, Eva's psychological defense was completely broken. Continue to check the other batteries. I will continue to communicate with your consciousness. All right. At this moment, the nearby decomposer, Walter, noticed that Eva had been in front of a battery for a long time. Eva, is there something wrong with that battery? No problem. Eva revealed a very natural smile. Her actions and expressions were very natural as she walked towards the next battery. The mass of flesh produced by the G-virus was stuck deep in Eva's ear canal. Han Dong's voice could be heard through the meatball. I didn't expect Miss Eva to be so talented in acting. It was really dangerous just now. My teammate's sense of smell seems to have improved a lot. Eva replied as calmly as possible. When the battery inspection is completed, I will persuade Tesla to leave this place. It's okay. I happen to have a few questions. Miss Eva, what's with the hand of the decomposer in your team? It seems that even he can't fully control it. Is this some kind of mythical level contact? Yes. It belongs to a high-level mythical level contact and is inclined towards evil. Everyone calls Walter's hands anti-magic hands. In terms of individual lethality, Walter is stronger than Captain Tesla. It seems that you and Pete, who is good at boxing, are excellent engineers. Tesla and Walter should belong to the top of the engineering talent, right? Yes. My participation is only to ensure that Tesla has enough energy to use. At the same time, I provide reconnaissance and a certain amount of long-range support for the team. Han Dong caught the key point and quickly asked, Tesla should have a high position in Wangdu, right? Could it be your position from the beginning was Tesla's battery kit? Well, Tesla is the son of the company's chairman. Due to the special nature of his body, Tesla Energy has been recruiting exclusive batteries for him. I got this identity after going through layers of assessment. Although battery kit may not sound good, I can enjoy resources and treatment that ordinary engineers can't get. And Tesla completely treats me as a teammate. Unlike the slaves in Shendu, your definition of slave is really broad. Your own prospects are limited, and you still think you're living a comfortable life? Although the slaves in Shendu are bound by the slavery system, they have the right to develop. As long as they can pass the God's chosen one test, they can obtain true freedom. What about you? You can only develop according to Tesla's preset path. Even your talent tree needs to choose the attributes that match the charger. When you become a high-level engineer, can you be exempted from the battery kit? Maybe not. The voice from a meatball was like the whisper of an evil god, echoing in Eva's mind and lingering there. When the information from a sound source was converted into an acceptable brainwave frequency by the brain, it formed tiny gray tentacles in the cerebral cortex that could affect the individual's consciousness. It really was some kind of obsession taking root in his mind. However, the tentacles were suppressed by Eva's firm belief. No, this is the freedom I pursue. Becoming Tesla's battery is my choice. No one forced me. Not everyone can lead mankind. At least I can't. Tesla is someone I value and believe in. He is worthy of me doing this. And, at the same time, he is also my dream. Ha ha ha, Han Dong's crazy laughter sounded. As the laughter echoed in her head, all the tentacles in her head were removed, and even Eva's self-consciousness became clearer. It seems that engineers are not as annoying as Novikov. I hope the sacred city in Wangdu will have a chance to cooperate in the future. Miss Eva, let me tell you something in advance. The real enemy may not be the hybrid demons. When you go back, you must be mentally prepared. Is the opening of the gate of destiny good or bad? Maybe only some people in the world can really answer this question. Maybe one day, the real disaster will come to our world. If this sentence was heard by other people of the same level, it would inevitably be regarded as crazy words. But for Eva, who was deeply influenced by him, it had a certain degree of persuasiveness. After all, Eva had seen Han Dong and the atavistic body flirting and having a harmonious relationship. Even the most important core of the atavistic body was hidden in Han Dong's body. And Eva herself was also a person who was good at thinking. She had always wondered why the three main cities could exist independently in the world. Were the hybrid demons really helpless against the human main cities? Well, I will pay attention. There's one last thing I want to ask, Miss Eva. What? When you leave, you can tell the information about me sneaking into the energy area to your teammates, or even directly tell Mr. Ed. But please be sure to persuade Tesla not to try to interfere in this battle. Once the brilliant waterfall collapses, my army will break through the defense line. This group of simple townspeople should be in a state of excitement, and you'll be in danger. Yes. Thank you for your cooperation, Miss Eva. The inspection was over. In the case that nothing was found, Tesla and the others, along with High Priest Seville, left the energy area and continued to participate in the purge of the mummy army. However, just 5 minutes after they left the energy area, the biological battery embedded in the circuit board automatically disengaged. The energy transmission was cut off, and the brilliant waterfall that shrouded the battlefield disappeared instantly. Chapter 997. Phew. Fortunately, it was Miss Eva who found me. Otherwise, I would have to face the particle radiation team again. The so-called instant kill is impossible. Tesla's identity is similar to Abel's. If he is forced into a dead end, he will certainly be able to use his trump card to influence the whole situation. Besides, there is also a little brother who is difficult to deal with. After being tricked by me several times, he became cautious. That was close. In Han Dong's original plan, his method of entering the energy area in the form of a biological battery was almost perfect. Moreover, Han Dong also used the faceless skull to disguise himself as a finished battery to pass the inspection stage without being suspected by the staff here. Who would have thought that Tesla would actually find this place and inspect the batteries? After a short interlude, Han Dong had already connected the undetectable void tentacles to hundreds of thousands of batteries here through the wires inside the circuit board. To be able to control so many tentacles simultaneously, he also relied on the support of the talent, tentacle enthusiast. The brilliance fades. Let the darkness descend upon Shindu. With Han Dong's thought, all the biological batteries were squeezed out from the grooves. Moreover, Han Dong also left a mark in all the battery grooves to prevent the batteries from being reloaded. This mark will not destroy the basic structure of the circuit board. When Han Dong becomes the pharaoh and takes over this place again, it will quickly recover. The light beam disappeared. Even the lighting in the energy area was extinguished. At the same time, the Toad space opened. High Priest Dun Yuan and his affiliated priests all appeared and immediately occupied the energy area. At the same time, with the disappearance of the light beam from the pyramid, the light waterfall that shrouded the battlefield disappeared. In fact, this did not have much impact on the townspeople holding umbrellas. It was as if the rain stopped and they could put away their umbrellas. The townspeople had never been affected by this brilliance. Their desire was their fighting spirit, which had never been reduced. But for the members of the divinity capital who were fighting against the townspeople in front of the temples, and even for the 9 pillar gods who possessed divinity, the brilliant waterfall was like the sound of a war drum that constantly rang out from the pyramids, boosting their fighting spirit. At the same time, the brilliance could also replenish their energy and accelerate the regeneration of their bodies. The brilliance dissipated, and the morale of the army was shaken. What happened to the pyramid? The pharaoh was supposed to be in charge of the interior. How could he have been invaded? Originally, the Shindu army had a slight advantage. Less than a minute after the flare dissipated, they were suppressed. One of the battle zones was even breached in advance. It was not the Sky Temple that Dean Richard dealt with. Because of the warning he received from the Wind God, Sky God Nuth chose to use a roundabout strategy against Headmaster Richard to avoid a direct confrontation with Richard. What was broken through in advance was the breeding temple. La 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 la, terrifying nursery rhymes came from the temple of breeding floating in the air. The temple area was filled with the remains of plants that looked like babies and a large number of strange larvae. However, most of them came from the arms of the scribe. At the main entrance of the temple, the god of breeding, Lephis, was entangled by more than 10 arms in the air. The most important thing was a digitized arm that grew out of the clerk's chest. All kinds of data chains floated under the skin. The data arm reached into the depths of Lephis' body, and a pink-colored godhead was extracted. For a moment, the divinity of breeding that covered this area was retracted into the godhead. The beautiful and voluptuous god of breeding immediately turned into a fat and ugly woman. Before she could speak, she was smashed into pieces by a bodyguard wearing a cartoon skull mask. Ha ha! My speed is the fastest, much faster than that old man Richard. I still need more battle achievements. I want to use this opportunity to return to this second devil. Scribe, are we going to support the other battle zones? No. I want more battle achievements. Isn't the biggest guy here called Pharaoh? Let's go kill him. After saying this, the clerk in red high heels immediately jumped down from the sky. When he landed, dozens of arms grew out from the lower half of his body, and he quickly climbed toward the pyramid. The clerk had not had such fun in a long time. He had not had such an extreme experience in a long time when he fought against opponents who were not weak at all. The inverted triangle, muscular bodyguard displayed a jumping ability similar to the Hulk and directly landed beside the clerk to ensure his safety. The clerk was not the only person who could destroy the temple and kill the god of breeding. The 4 bodyguards of the town hall were equally terrifying. The bodyguard wearing a cartoon skull mask was the type that was more talkative. He asked curiously, "Scribe, have you become stronger? Skeleton boy, you have a good eye. I have completely occupied the network data center in God's capital and obtained some new things. Congratulations, Scribe. You will definitely return to the second place." After saying this, the clerk sang a cheerful tune again. The particle radiation team had just left the energy area and returned to the lowest level to eliminate the mummies. When the biological light in the pyramid went out and they learned that the energy supply was cut off, all of them were stunned. High Priest Seville, who was next to them, showed an expression of impossible. How could this be? We clearly did a detailed inspection of the energy area. Is there any place in the pyramid that can cut off the energy supply? High Priest Seville whispered. No, but the energy area can't be invaded. How could this be? After saying this, Tesla felt that he had been fooled again. For a moment, a strong electric current ran through his body. He had not experienced this kind of shame and powerlessness for a long time. At this moment, Eva's voice came. Tesla, things have developed to the point where we can't intervene. If Nicholas really invaded the energy area, Manager Ed will definitely intervene personally. With the withdrawal of the brilliant waterfall, the army brought by Nicholas may break through the defense line. As Manager Ed said, this is his battle. Let's go back to Wangdu. Tesla was not reconciled. He had clearly thought that the energy area might be a breakthrough and had personally applied to Ed for inspection, but there was still a problem. He always felt that the problem of the pyramid was related to his carelessness in the inspection. Since the mummies here basically cleaned up, I must take a look at the energy area. Why didn't we find it just now? Just as the team and High Priest Seville were rushing back. Boom! The passage where they were in suddenly trembled, and a crack appeared on the wall. Due to the lack of energy supply, the seal was deactivated. The overall structure of the pyramid was no longer as strong as before. Boom! The second collision directly broke the wall. 4 super-muscular men in suits and different headdresses broke the wall. However, the pyramid itself was still very hard, causing the shoulder of the pig-headed security guard who was responsible for the collision to be dislocated. Immediately after, la 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 la, cheerful singing came from the opening. The clerk had her own pride. She was not willing to go through the opening that Han Dong broke. Hey, there are people here. Hello. The clerk waved her more than 10 arms and greeted Tesla and the others. You should be the staff here, right? Can you take me to the Pharaoh? I have to kill him quickly. Chapter 998. The biological batteries in the energy sector have all fallen off. The capacitor has been affected by unknown factors and cannot be reset. This has led to the following results. 1. The brilliant waterfall has been forcibly shut down. 2. Emergency backup energy, about 20% of the total biological energy, has been activated. Due to the population limit, the pyramid can only be maintained in a subactive state. A large number of rebels have suddenly appeared in the energy sector before the gate has been opened. The leader has been confirmed to be Origin of Terror, Tutraman. At the same time, an unknown energy interference has been detected. The priests in the energy sector have fallen into a disadvantageous position, requesting backup. Emergency, God of Breeding, Lephis, has been killed by the enemy. The Temple of Breeding and its subsidiary companies have completely lost control. Osiris Corporation has been subjected to large-scale destruction by some kind of hot chain, requesting backup from the pyramid. The Temple of Earth's stone guards have been restrained by the invaders. The enemy is a type of scarecrow that can harvest souls. They can kill the stone guards without destroying the rock layer. The number of combatants has been reduced by 80%. Main God Gabe has been unable to kill the main body of the enemy scarecrow, requesting backup from the pyramid. Due to the withdrawal of the brilliant waterfall, the Temple of Rain has been shrouded in thick fog. Due to the reduction of the fog's coverage, the isolation effect is stronger, including God of Rain, Tevnut. All personnel in the Temple of Rain's battle zone have lost contact. Latest situation. Due to the double negative pressure caused by the energy and population, the pyramid has been completely deactivated. The southern bottom wall has been hit by a huge force, and the wall has been shattered. The invaders have been detected to be the strange woman who killed the god of breeding and her 4 subordinates. A series of negative information that could turn the situation around in an instant and plunge the fairy's capital into a hopeless situation was conveyed to the pharaoh by different information priests within a minute. Ed Lewis from Wangdu's touring modeling. After listening to the information, he just sat quietly on the throne with his hands crossed in front of him. There was not much change in his gaze. He did not rush to the energy sector immediately to suppress the invaders and try to restore the energy supply. He also did not rush to the broken gap at the bottom of the pyramid to temporarily repair and suppress the new invaders. He also did not fall into a quagmire of anger because of the momentary loss of control. Ed's brain was like a top-notch CPU. With the support provided by the motherboard of his physical body, he was integrating the information he had received and providing the best solution to the current situation. The information priests knelt in a row in front of Ed. They used their brain communication characteristics to connect with different war zones and important areas inside the pyramid. Even if all the biological communication lines in Fairy's capital were shut down and all the ports were sealed, they could still use the information priest to transmit information efficiently. Ed touched the message priest's head and conveyed his war orders. Information priest, backup energy division, focus on carrying the population and cut off unnecessary energy supply lines. The operation to eliminate the mummies should be completed within 20 minutes. After that, we will gradually restore the energy supply of the pyramid. Information priest, Sun Temple, assign 30% of the Sun priests and radiant bodies to provide assistance to the Terrene Shrine. When the reinforcements arrive, gather the remaining stone guards and take the floating stone to the Sun God Temple as an exchange for the garrison. Information priest, Hades Temple, remove the restrictions on the underworld of the Temple of Osiris and allow Osiris to activate the Hades mode and release a large number of deaths regardless of war wounds. Information priest, Nature Temple, assign 3 top plant cultivators from the Nature Temple to the Rainwater Temple. Without entering the fog, they will explore the internal situation through the cultivation of perception plants and report the battle situation in the fog in a timely manner. Information priest, defense at the bottom of the pyramid, send Scarab High Priest, Snake Ring High Priest, and Wolfhead High Priest at the bottom of the pyramid to resist the invaders. The Scarab organization will seal the entrance, and at the same time, you will need to ensure the safety of Tesla and the others in the battle. Yes. Within a minute, Ed issued the best response to the current situation. Perhaps it was not enough to reverse the battle situation, but it could definitely stabilize the situation for a long time. However, the most important thing at the moment was the way to deal with the energy zone. Pharaoh, how should we deal with the energy zone? According to the information sent back, we can confirm that the source of fear, Tutraman and his priests are in it. We request to kill the source of fear. The ones who made the request were the last 3 high priests who stayed by Pharaoh's side. It's not that simple. The reason why I left the energy zone until the end is because this is the real end. I am 100% sure that Nicholas is hiding in it. You can launch a surprise attack on the population of the pyramid. You can contact the source of fear in advance and meet him inside the pyramid. You can find the only gap in the energy zone and avoid the detection system to enter it. Except for this kid, no one else can do it. The three of you prepare for the final battle and bring the priest with you to the energy zone. There's only one thing I need you to do. Remove as many distractions as possible, except for Nicholas. Yes, energy zone. When the bio battery was completely stripped, the interior was completely dark. Rumble. The main door opened. The three high priest squads entered first. Due to the water on the ground, when the priests entered, they all made a sound because of their footsteps. Even if they were wearing shoes, they still felt uncomfortable when they came in contact with the water. If the feet of these priests were examined, they would find that there were some shallow contamination lines on the tips of their fingers. The three high priests entered the hall one after another. Pharaoh, Ed Lewis, arrived. As the supreme ruler of Chengdu, the pharaoh's appearance was still exaggerated. Countless black cables were connected to his back, like a magnificent giant cloak. Feeling the humid air, Ed whispered softly, "Atavistic body." The energy zone was shrouded in darkness, coldness, and humidity. Nothing could be seen. However, with a wave of Ed's hand, hundreds of millions of data cables connected to him squeezed into the energy zone. Due to the world suppression, Ed was forced back to the level of Level 5 engineer, but his ability system was beyond Level 5. In addition, he, who held the node, was supported by the power of the world of Prometheus. Data erosion. Every cable connected to Ed's back corresponded to an independent erosion program. Whether it was stone, metal, water stains, or living things, they were all occupied by the cables. Domain digitization. For a time, the walls and ground of the energy zone were all packed with cables. There was not a trace of space. It was full of densely arranged data cables. At this time, Ed's voice echoed in the energy zone. "Nicholas, I can see that you are very protective of the public facilities here. The devices in the energy zone were almost all forcibly shut down without any damage. You know very well that the energy zone could be said to be the true heart of Chengdu. All the high-quality black water will be fractionated here. Once it is damaged, it will take at least 10 years to repair. It may even cause the entire Chengdu to degenerate due to a long-term energy shortage. Why don't we make this battle simpler? You just need to connect a cable to the back of your head, and the final battle will be carried out in my head through the true projection. It will belong to you and me, a true one-on-one." Such a proposal seemed to give Ed an advantage. After all, this method of consciousness connection would be carried out in Ed's head. However, maintaining the biological battery state, Han Dong's body was completely deformed. But the meatball in the body was very happy to answer. "Okay, come on." Chapter 999. Han Dong was well aware of the importance of the energy zone. Once the energy supply was cut off, Ed would definitely come looking for them, and a war would be inevitable. Even Han Dong himself was thinking about how to minimize the damage to the energy sector. Who would have thought that AI would come up with such a perfect suggestion right from the start? Through the cable, both of their consciousnesses were connected to an independent consciousness space. Although this would not cause any damage to the energy zone, it also meant that Han Dong would have to face Ed alone without the help of Miss Jane and Meritus. However, from the time they invaded the pyramid until now, the two of them had provided enough assistance. Now, if the two of them stayed here and cooperated with the priests to deal with the three priests under the pharaoh, they might be able to gain complete control of the pyramid when the consciousness ended. "Okay, come on." Just as Han Dong was about to connect the cable to the back of his head, he was blocked by a layer of clear water. Meritus's puzzled voice came from the side. "Nicholas, we have the upper hand now. Why do you accept such a suggestion?" Han Dong smiled and replied, "If we accept such a suggestion, we will still have the upper hand. Moreover, such a battle of consciousnesses can minimize the losses of the Chengdu. Also, I have some things I want to talk to the pharaoh in private. Miss Mary, I'll leave the matter of the small soldiers to you. Oomph. This guy uses the power of the world to release a domain that can suppress my water domain. He is definitely more powerful than that human Novikov. Since we've already come this far, don't die. The worried Meritus was a completely different person compared to when she first met Han Dong. If Han Dong were to be defeated here, all her efforts would be for naught. Even though she had finally found some interest in her life, and was even fantasizing about following Han Dong on an adventure, she was still unable to do so. On the other hand, Miss Jane just lay quietly on the cart and did not say anything. She knew very well that Han Dong made all his decisions after careful consideration. He would never let down the expectations of the town. I'll leave the situation outside to you guys. When the cable came from the back of the head, Han Dong's body was immediately pulled into the wall by the cables. Ed Lewis, who was standing at the entrance, also closed his eyes. His body slowly sank into the cables that covered his feet. Ed was an upright person, although the consciousness server he had built in his brain was the main battlefield. However, Ed did not intend to use the main body of consciousness to suppress Han Dong. He would only use some geographical advantages. However, just as Ed entered his consciousness server, he felt that something was wrong. The pyramid arena created by Ed was invaded by an unknown factor. The arena, which should have been clean and free of debris, had gray tentacles growing out of it every once in a while. Even the air was mixed with gray dust. What was even more frightening was the audience seats, which should have been empty, were scattered with a group of heretics wearing gray cloaks. Their faces were hidden in the shadows. At this moment, the tentacles that grew out of the arena intertwined with each other and slowly formed the appearance of Nicholas. Connecting to the brain, consciousness transmission. Because he did not collect information about Han Dong's brain, Ed Lewis made a wrong move at the last moment. There was nothing wrong with this move. Ed's brain was known as the divine armament. In Shundu, if placed in the Turing Modeling Company for comparison, his brain's comprehensive index, representing the brain's potential, capacity, data processing speed, and other parameters. Individuals of different levels could be measured through standardized indexes, could be ranked in the top 3 in the company. It could simulate consciousness scenes extremely quickly and could even exert 120% of its ability in a consciousness battle. However, if it was only targeted at the brain, using Wangdu's formula to score Han Dong's brain, not to mention the ranking in the 3 main cities, but the ranking in the entire hybrid demon world, Han Dong's brain could definitely be ranked in the top 10, top 5, or even top 3. The moment the data cable was connected to the faceless head, it had been invaded by a unique pollution. This pollution was different from all the pollution Ed had seen. It did not cause any damage to Ed's brain. It also did not cause Ed's consciousness to have any changes related to degeneration. The pollution expressed by gray matter was only the simplest erosion, occupation, and transformation. Looking at the consciousness body, made of gray tentacles, Ed could feel that the Han Dong in front of him was not affected by the space of consciousness and belonged to a completely independent consciousness body. It was not like it was connected, but invaded. No wonder you agreed to connect to the consciousness area I established. It turns out that you have a more special brain than me. Senior Ed's brain is also quite powerful. If I'm not wrong, after you became the Pharaoh, you directly removed all the management systems in the pyramid and directly used your brain as a processor to be responsible for all the data processing in the pyramid. This made your position unshakable, unless someone like me directly launched a node war against you. Ed smiled and nodded. Haha, let's stop flattering each other. Since you can completely isolate yourself from the influence of the space of consciousness, I don't have to hold anything back. Let's begin. The faster the battle between us ends, the less damage to God's capital will be. Ed raised his hand. Han Dong suddenly received a notification from the Fate system. Frowny face. The restrictions on the use of Fate equipment have been removed. 1. Master the Blood Oath, Roghorn Skull, damaged. 2. Zaldum, Raven's Staff. Obtained use rights. Han Dong was surprised. Senior Ed, what are you doing? I'm a grade 5 engineer in God's capital, and my level is much higher than yours. If I still have to restrict your use of Fate equipment, it would be meaningless. Since you accepted my challenge, I can give you some preferential treatment. Thank you. Han Dong waved his hand. Caw, the raven's staff, exuding a strong magical aura, was held in his left hand. At this moment, the necromancer's finger glove on his left hand resonated with the black magic staff, turning into strips of dried skin bandages with the face of the necromancer printed on them, wrapping around the staff. The unique grade slave equipment seemed to be fused with a higher grade equipment of the same attribute. This made Han Dong very surprised. The raven staff's overall attribute was more inclined towards death, and at the same time, it also had an additional exclusive ability. At the same time, a skull pendant that was constantly dripping blood hung in front of Han Dong's chest. When Count in his body felt the aura of the necromancer's blood, he immediately became excited. Ed stared at Han Dong's fate equipment with an awkward expression. Oh my god, there are actually 2 epic equipment. I'm regretting it now. This is too much. Ed smiled bitterly as he took out his own equipment. In an instant, Han Dong smelled danger and quickly retreated. Lines of green data floated under Ed's skin and gathered in his right hand. Slowly, a silver pistol with an integrated circuit structure was formed. Chapter 1000. Through the perfect projection of consciousness, Ed stood in the arena. He changed the image of a bald pharaoh with black skin and golden lines. When he held this integrated circuit-structured silver pistol in his hand, his entire aura and body shape were changing. Through the form of self-programming, the 2 characteristics were separated. Originally, since Ed obtained the Prometheus node, he had obtained a privilege, the privilege given by the Destiny Space, Pharaoh clone. The Destiny Space helped AI to create a perfect copy of his consciousness. However, the body used to carry the consciousness still needed to be made by himself. Therefore, Ed used the top technology of the Black Pyramid and the highest level of black water to create a Pharaoh body, leaving it in the Destiny world to manage everything in Shundu during the war. The biological skeleton used by Ed was also a clone created based on the Pharaoh's body. Using this opportunity, Ed chose to develop in both directions. 1. In the real world, he continued to walk the path of simulation programming. 2. The perfect clone left in the node combined the characteristics of Shundu and developed along the path of Pharaoh. This kind of development was not necessarily good, just like not advocating the Holy City and not advocating the dual training of apprentice knights. Many participants who obtained the real node, such as Commander Malone who obtained a higher level node, would also choose to develop single-minded. The clone and the main body's development path were exactly the same, which would make cultivation twice the result with half the effort. Commander Malone would return to Hell once every year, and his strength would also increase by leaps and bounds, all from the Devil King's clone's cultivation in Hell. However, Ed chose to develop his business in 2 different ways. In his eyes, Shundu had its own unique biological characteristics. If he could perfectly combine the biological computer technology in the background of Prometheus with his computer technology in the electronic information era, he might be able to get rid of the shackles at some point in time and break through to a higher level. Now, Ed had not yet been able to combine the Pharaoh's characteristics with the main body's programming characteristics. Therefore, for the current decisive battle, Ed separated the 2 different attributes and displayed their own characteristics. This was somewhat similar to Han Dong and could even be said to be a common characteristic of geniuses. Through a self-programming algorithm, a near-perfect left and right separation was achieved. Left half of the body, Pharaoh dark in color, golden lines all over the skin, and an accessory unique to the Pharaoh, a nose ring, a golden gauntlet, and a black dress woven from nano-grade biomass materials. Barefoot, it stepped on the ground. There was also a unique type of black water at the bottom of the soles of his feet. It spread out in the form of lines, like lines of a regular matrix pattern. His entire body merged with the god's capital. Right half, programmer the standard skin tone of a Caucasian. His face still has stubble that hasn't been shaved clean. He was wearing a polo shirt with the logo of touring modeling, a pair of fashionable jeans and leather shoes, and a brown wig. From the front, he looked like a standard social animal. However, there was an inhuman structure on Ed's back. There were various data interfaces on his back, and their functions were unknown. When the separation of left and right was complete, the integrated circuit pistol also began to undergo a derivative change. Regular metal lines spread out from the circuit on the surface. In the palm of the corresponding left half of the body, a shiny black pistol in the style of a mechanical creature was constructed. Overall, whether it was the diversity of the ability or the essence of being a participant of fate, Ed started from mathematics, while Han Dong started from occult. The two could be said to belong to the same type of people. The compatibility is so high. Han Dong was amazed by Ed's transformation, but he was more concerned about the silver integrated circuit pistol and the danger signal directly transmitted by the faceless skull. Equipment of unique grade and above has personality. Good equipment not only requires proficiency in using, but also modification. Architect, original, epic firearm, originated from the Tier 5 True Fate Terminator series. Nicholas, the reason why you privately received a large amount of support from the God's Capital was largely because of your mythical contact with Anubis, right? And it seems that during the God's Chosen One assessment, you gained divinity by devouring the underworld's underworld. Together with this black magic equipment that produces energy entanglement, you should be able to achieve a very deep level of death. Naturally, there is no such thing as death. I'm curious if my architect can erase death. Finished speaking, he raised his right hand. The silver muzzle was aimed at Han Dong. For a moment, Han Dong felt as if he was sentenced to death. Intuition told Han Dong that dodging was meaningless. No matter how fast he was, no matter how agile he was, he would still be hit. Count! Hey, don't call me for this kind of suicidal thing. Count and Han Dong's consciousness were connected, so they were clear about the threat of firearms. I'm not asking you to block. I will block the first time. When I block, I need you to immediately burst out with your strongest attack to reduce his chances of shooting. If I can't block even one shot, this match will be meaningless. Okay, dead form. The finger glove was completely attached to the higher-level crow staff with similar attributes. As the bandage on the surface of the staff floated, Han Dong's body immediately changed. Some kind of divinity from Anubis was escaping. The ground Han Dong stepped on became the structure of the underworld. However, this was not a turn-based battle. Ed had already pulled the trigger. Ziz, a strange electromagnetic sound resounded in the air, and a strange bullet shot out. Occasionally, a string of related program characters would appear around the bullet, and it even felt like the bullet was not real. Perhaps it was just a string of programs that were shot out from the muzzle. The appearance of the bullet was just an image projection of the program in space. If the picture was paused and observed carefully, there was a program in the middle. F, target, equals Nicholas. This meant that the program would only work on Nicholas, and no matter how he dodged, it would be futile. On Han Dong's side, he did not use any external defensive measures, such as sand walls and barriers. The D, U, A, T engraved on the undead's arm flashed and resonated with the staff. Advanced Death Secret Technique. Coffin of the Dead. A black coffin with the head of Anubis on top immediately put Han Dong into it. Click, click. When the bullet collided with the coffin, it made a sharp sound similar to a sonic boom. The gray tentacles growing on the ground around were invaded by the broken program, caused by the impact, and were directly erased. When it subsided, a fairly uniform spiral pit was left on the surface of the thick coffin, and the coffin had been completely penetrated. The deepest part just reached the surface of Han Dong's abdomen. It was blocked. At this moment, boom, the huge force lifted the coffin lid and flew straight to Ed Duong. The black water shield under Ed's feet bounced the coffin lid away. Just as the coffin lid bounced away, a terrifying creature appeared in Ed's field of vision. A canine head with 9 heads, a mouth large enough to swallow a small building, and bright red tentacles all over its body, which had swallowed the nether blood, suddenly attacked. Ed immediately switched to the black pistol in his left hand. Continuous shooting, bang, bang, bang. A bullet formed a solid biomass door in front of him to block the blood dog. The other 2 bullets were shot into the blood dog's body, triggering changes at the genetic level. However, the existence of a G-virus suppressed the genetic changes in reverse. The structure of the holy sword flowing in the blood even shattered and annihilated the invading black bullets. Well, there's another mythical level contact. Boom, the biomass door was smashed by the crazy blood dog. The bloody mouth instantly swallowed Ed, the teeth made of tentacles. Immediately, the target in the mouth was deeply contaminated and chewed. Chapter 1001. In terms of equipment compatibility, Han Dong was not low at all. Although Count often cursed in his body, when it came to fighting, he would still work very hard and even put in a lot of effort. His current life was actually much more interesting than when he was in the Scarlet Manor. The reason was that Han Dong's body was more exquisite and perfect than any body Count had ever seen. Even if Count was proud, he had to admit that Han Dong's body was better than his. The blood flowing in Han Dong's body was even more unique. Master of the Blood Oath, Roghorn Skull of the Nether Blood, damaged. The improvement that this equipment brought to Count was something that he could not feel as a hybrid demon. He could not even imagine it. Every time the ugly skull was integrated into the blood dog's body, Count would hear whispers from the gods in another world. Occasionally, Count's consciousness would cross dimensions and stand in the depths of an ancient castle filled with flesh and blood for a short period of time to accept the pilgrimage ceremony from the Blood Oath. There were even a few times when Count's consciousness touched the gate of truth in this way. The skull was embedded and the nether blood was absorbed. The blood dog's level was increased in all aspects, whether it was size, density, fear effect, or direct damage. It broke through the obstacles and swallowed Ed in one bite. The super dense tentacles bit into Ed's body directly, giving him an irresistible and unrecoverable death bite. His body was immediately torn apart. At the critical moment, he pulled the trigger. Bang! The silver pistol fired another bullet, which was actually a program. The muzzle was not pointed at the blood dog that was biting Ed, nor at Han Dong, who was standing 10 meters away. Instead, it was shot in a random direction. When a silver bullet hit the ground, the program began to calculate. With the faintly discernible string of characters, an intact Ed Lewis was born. Even the blood dog next to him had not finished eating yet, but this side had already completed its rebirth and reconstruction, and the main body was completely fine. Huh? Count, spit out the thing in your mouth. Han Dong's reaction speed was very fast. He had already roughly realized Ed's uniqueness, but he was still one step too slow. Ed, who had reconstructed his body, aimed the silver pistol at Blood Dog's head. Bang, another bullet was fired. The corresponding program for the bullet was very short, and it seemed to contain a for loop command. The bullet accurately entered the Blood Dog's mouth and integrated with the body that had been chewed up inside. With the addition of the circular command, the originally broken program body began to perform some kind of circular calculation, infinitely generating random sequences. The feedback in reality directly led to the rapid proliferation of the torn flesh, which was far faster than the blood dog's gnawing and digestion speed. When for equals 999,999, changing the program composition, inserting an int to forcibly interrupt the current program. A mushroom cloud formed in the arena as Blood Dog's arm was completely torn apart, unable to regenerate in a short period of time. Han Dong's main body was also completely blown away by the violent impact of the explosion. A wisp of black sand supported Han Dong's back and cushioned his fall. Even so, Han Dong's body was completely attached to the edge of the arena before he completely stopped. Ah, ah. Count's consciousness was wailing in pain in his body, and Han Dong directly cut off his consciousness. Since AI did not attack him, Han Dong took this opportunity to review the battle that had just taken place. It was the first time that Han Dong had seen such an opponent. His ability was really too strange. Compared to the biomass bullets fired by the black pistol, the threat of a silver pistol is much greater. What was shot out should be a program that could affect reality, but it corresponded to different functions. Based on the battle just now, it could be roughly seen. The bullets with the same functions should not be able to fire continuously. Otherwise, the first bullet with the destructive program would have killed me with 2 more shots. The bullet program not only has the ability to destroy, but it also has the ability to self-construct and change. There must be many other functions that have not been used. This kind of true damage from the program can directly touch the essence of existence. The explosion not only seriously injured his right arm, but also almost blew up Count's consciousness. Is a programmer that strong? The dust in the arena had not yet dispersed. Ed did not give chase. Taking advantage of this gap, he was also busy. This was Ed's space of consciousness, so he naturally enjoyed a certain amount of preferential treatment. A few data cables rose from the ground and connected to the interface on his back. It was not to input energy, but to debug and integrate part of the chaotic data. The body reconstructed by the program was not necessarily perfect, and it needed to be optimized in this way. Double epic equipment, double mythical equipment, and 2 completely different combat modes. I didn't expect to use up a crucial regeneration bullet at the beginning. Moreover, the deletion bullet I shot at full strength can be blocked by the mythical equipment. How troublesome. Let's change the combat mode a little. This kid is really interesting. Click a concise and quick reload was completed on the silver pistol. In a short time, this architectural original would not be able to shoot. It seemed to be a reload, but in fact, Ed was reprogramming the silver pistol. Architect only had a series of initial programs to ensure stability and the weight of the material. If you want to shoot a more special bullet, you need to do in-depth programming. At this time, Han Dong's voice came from the other side of the dust. Mr. Ed used to work in mathematics? That's right. I started with mathematics and then became a programmer at Turing Company. No wonder I almost died. Wang Du's corresponding ability system is really strange. I'm going to use all my strength next. Come on. Saying that, Ed raised his black left arm covered with golden lines. The black pistol fired continuously. Each black bullet would evolve into a variety of black water monsters in the air, or raptors with wings, or monsters running on the ground, looking for Han Dong on the opposite side of the dust. However, whoosh, a tentacle of starlight that could not be recognized by the monsters shot out from the dust at a faster speed and circled behind Ed. Void transfer. Han Dong, who completed the transfer, was covered with gray bandages, suspended in the air, holding the scythe of the dead, transformed from the crow staff. With Han Dong as the center, the environment within 10 meters turned into the underworld. The virtual image of Anubis appeared behind Han Dong. Well, space transfer. Ed immediately stopped programming and pulled the trigger of the silver pistol. This time, no bullets were fired. At the moment the trigger was pulled, the self-program was changed. The integrated circuit structure of the pistol immediately turned into a silver lightsaber. He turned around and raised it. The lightsaber and the scythe collided in the air. Death magic, devouring of 10,000 insects. A large number of holes appeared on the surface of Han Dong's withered arm holding the scythe. Countless scarabs crawled out from the inside, trying to bite Ed's body. Ed stepped hard on his left foot, and all the black water on the ground splashed up. They turned into creatures similar to miniature aliens and collided head-on with the scarabs. They were equally matched. At this time, the 2 of them blocked each other's weapons at the same time and slashed again. The frequency of their movements was almost the same. Clang, clang, clang. Gray light bursts appeared in different places in the arena one after another. The two of them, who were not very good at close combat, seemed to be in agreement and continued to fight in close combat. The primitive desire of humans to fight was completely released, and they happily collided head-on. A smile that was immersed in the battle hung on their faces at the same time. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.